Chapter 1233, Unyielding. Chapter 1233, Unyielding. Holy Ancestor Azure Dragon of Heavenly Monster Tribe showing himself here had frightened the warriors on the Immortal Island. They finally had the chance to see the legendary Immortal Realm expert. However, Azure Dragon wasn't interested in the others. His pupils shrank as he said, "We are going to talk in private." He looked at Shiyang. Shiyang nodded, "Okay." Azure Dragon chuckled and then disappeared. At the same time, a massive energy tornado twirled and covered Shiyang tightly. He couldn't even wiggle and he felt so dizzy. When he resumed his normal condition, he found himself standing on the Heavenly Monster mountain range in the Vault of Sky Sea area. Those mountains here were arranged like fingers of a hand. The earth and heaven energy in this mountain range was fresh and abundant. Taking in the milky white air, Shiyang felt refreshed and happy. Azure Dragon smiled and looked at the Heavenly Monster mountain range happily. "When we left this place, the earth and heaven energy wasn't suitable for our cultivation anymore. After many years, I finally got the chance to return to our home." Shiyang didn't know what he wanted to say, so he just kept silent and listened to him. "Thank you for your labor. Our Heavenly Monster Tribe has to thank you a lot." Azure Dragon smiled until his eye squinted. "No need," Shiyang wore a faint face. "After fusing with the Genesis fruit, I got some benefits too. I didn't take the worst of it." "Haha, of course, you won't bear a loss. The God Clan has only made your bloodthirsty force bear the loss once." Azure Dragon contemplated for a while and then said, "In the next 10,000 years, Grace Mainland will be the best place for cultivating in the entire universe. Every square inch here will be very pricey. Anyway, the Grace Mainland is our ancestral star. Our Heavenly Monster Tribe must move back here." Shiyang nodded. He knew that Heavenly Monster Tribe would absolutely return because this planet was the most suitable place for their members to cultivate. They sure knew how to make a good decision. This continent needs to be divided one more time. Azure Dragon didn't want to go around the bush. The Heavenly Monster mountain range and the adjacent areas should belong to our Heavenly Monster Tribe, including the surrounding sea. "I hope you will move all irrelevant warriors out of this area and as far as possible." "Oh right, what do you call this sea area?" "The Endless Sea." "Yeah, the Endless Sea. Our Heavenly Monster Tribe wants the Endless Sea. In the next 10,000 years, we will cultivate in the Endless Sea. This place will belong to us." Azure Dragon simply stated his wish. Shiyang's eyes became cold. He had fused with the origin, so he knew that Endless Sea was the place that was going to have the thickest earth and heaven energy in the future. At the same time, the Heavenly Monster mountain range had a magical field of force that wasn't created by Heavenly Monster Tribe. It was naturally formed. If they cultivated near that field, their soul consciousness could somehow reach the fountainhead of power Upanishad. Although it wasn't that their souls could enter that place, it was still going to help them a lot to comprehend their powers deeper if they could cultivate in this area. It was similar to Extreme Purgatory Field in Raging Flamestar area where warriors could understand their powers better and faster. Shiyang could even feel that this field of force was expanding towards the Endless Sea little by little. It rippled like waves in the sea. In 100 years, the entire Endless Sea was going to stay within this magical field of force. Also, that field and the dark magnetic noxious mist were connected. Currently, the dark magnetic noxious mist was changing magically. Many spirit herbs and plants were growing there together with rare and precious crystals, which Shiyang had seen only on Desolate. The misty area to the east of the Endless Sea used to be an area where experts of Heavenly Monster Tribe cultivated ascetically. That area belongs to the Endless Sea, so it should belong to our Heavenly Monster Tribe too, said Azure Dragon sternly. Shiyang felt more irritated. As far as he knew, the Endless Sea and the dark magnetic noxious mist were the most special places on this continent. The Endless Sea was going to be filled with thick energy, so the warriors could comprehend their powers better there. The dark magnetic noxious field was going to create a lot of treasures. These two areas were likely going to become the most precious lands in this continent. It was the reason why he wanted to bring the Yang family and the Sha family to the Endless Sea but not Divine Great Land. As soon as the Holy Monster of Heavenly Monster Tribe requested the said two lands, the most precious lands in the future. Shi Yang obviously didn't agree. However, he didn't say it curtly. Instead, he said with a regretful face, "It's no use even when you talk to me." Azure Dragon frowned. "Why is it no use?" "I can't decide that," Shi Yang shrugged and said reluctantly. "The Endless is occupied. The Yang family owns it. It always belongs to the Yang family." Azure Dragon snorted. "You've fused with the origin. Your words can determine the fate of this continent. Some chiefs of our bloodthirsty force have some agreement with the Yang family. The successors of the bloodthirsty force will be trained in the Endless Sea. Well, your heavenly monster tribe wants to swallow the Endless Sea and even the dark magnetic noxious mist. I don't think those chiefs would agree with you. If you want to negotiate, you should find them." Shi Yang spoke nonchalantly. This heavenly monster tribe's holy ancestor apparent wanted to force him. Before the chiefs of the bloodthirsty force arrived, he wanted to use his immortal cultivation base to force Shi Yang. As Shi Yang was the heir of the bloodthirsty force's master, he was also the spokesman of the current bloodthirsty force and he had the origin. If he agreed with Azure Dragon under his pressure, it would be a big headache to Xian He and Frederick later. "You're the new generation of bloodthirsty. It's alright if you just nod." Azure Dragon spoke again. Billions of mysterious symbols were moving in his eyes. They twinkled like diamonds and moved inside his pupils. An unclear, threatening power was generated and getting stronger. Shi Yang's face changed. He snorted and then said, "Precursor, you want to force me with your power? Before the experts of our bloodthirsty force arrive, you want to force me into it? I hoped that you would agree. This endless sea and that thick mist used to belong to our heavenly monster tribe. We just need 2 pieces of land. I don't think it's too much compared to the entire continent." Azure Dragon was persistent. The solemn, tyrannical monster chi on his body was like billions of mountains pressing down on Shi Yang's head. Shi Yang felt that it hard to breathe. He knew that Azure Dragon hadn't used all of his force. It was just a bit of power and Shi Yang knew that it was much more intimidating than facing 10 of Fick at the same time. He was dispirited that he couldn't counter the Azure Dragon. Crack, crack, crack. The bones in his body made cracking noises as he turned into his immortal demon body, the fighting form of his race. Still, it was strenuous to resist the pressure. His crimson eyes were cold as he said, "If your heavenly monster tribe wants to claim the Endless Sea and the dark magnetic noxious mist, you have to kill me first." Holy Beast Azure Dragon studied him. A strange light flared up from his eyes. The old beast pondered for a while and then snorted. The pressure immediately fell from the sky. Under his power, even the sky seemed to shatter soon. It felt 10 times as heavy as the sky. Shi Yang quivered. His veins and bones were about to be smashed. He gritted his teeth to keep his mind sound and burned the immortal demon blood. He smiled crazily all of a sudden. "My co-soul has fused with the origin of this continent. If I die, your heavenly monster tribe's hope and future will shatter. Do you still want to touch me?" He suddenly understood this. Azure Dragon would never dare to touch him. Quite the contrary, if Shi Yang was in danger, Azure Dragon had to use his best means to protect him to prevent his soul altar from disappearing. Shi Yang was the basic assurance for the future of a strong heavenly monster tribe. As Shi Yang understood it clearly, he wasn't afraid anymore. He laughed contentedly. "Who do you think you can scare? Okay, I now won't do anything to defend myself. Let's see if you dare to kill me." Then, he retrieved his energy and stopped burning the immortal demon blood. When Azure Dragon saw him do that, his face changed dramatically. He immediately retrieved all of his threats, his face grimaced. "You aren't afraid of death?" "I am, I very am. But I'm not afraid of you because you will never dare to touch me." Shi Yang's eyes twinkled. Looking at the heavenly monster mountain range, he mocked. "Well, it's not easy to take all the good things. Your heavenly monster tribe has been hiding for a long time. The God clan is still powerful. Do you think you can control this whole world? Ridiculous." Azure Dragon had a headache now. Shi Yang was right. Even if Azure Dragon had more guts, he couldn't dare to kill Shi Yang. Shi Yang represented the future of Heavenly Monster Tribe's ancestral star. If he died, Grace Mainland would return to its bleak condition without the origin. It was the chance that Heavenly Monster Tribe had been waiting for. 10,000 years would be destroyed with him too. Being the current chief of the Heavenly Monster Tribe, how dare he do that? Okay, fine, tell me what we should do. Azure Dragon didn't know whether he should cry or smile. He had to step back for the overall benefit. We don't have many members in our tribe anymore. We are in a hurry to get to the endless sea or the dark magnetic noxious mist to recover our conditions. What do you think? Well, after the God Clan is defeated, we will talk about this. As Shi Yang had grabbed Azure Dragon's weakness, he felt relaxed. For the time being, the members of Heavenly Monster Tribe can go to the sea area around the Heavenly Monster Mountain Range. And for future resettlement, we will discuss later. Azure Dragon agreed reluctantly. I'm going to take my tribe here. He didn't want to linger. Azure Dragon opened his mouth to spurt out a big lightning ball to cover Shi Yang and directly threw him back to the Immortal Island. When he returned from Heavenly Monster Mountain Range to the Immortal Island, Blood Devil and the others were still there. Now, they were all astounded upon seeing him come back. You're back, Shang Chen sounded worried. Oh, when did you arrive? Shi Yang was surprised. When he came back to Devil Bloodstar, he knew that Shang Chen wasn't there. He didn't think that Shang Chen would come here using the space teleport formation. You have one day to arrange things here. After that, we must go quickly, hissed Shang Chen. Shi Yang was surprised. What makes you so hurried? To help you, Sho Jiao, Mo Fu, Wu Feng, and Jiao Shan had gone to Agate Star area. The God Clan is forcefully taking revenge at their star areas. The situation got really serious, said Shang Chen. Shi Yang shivered inwardly. Only I can help them solve this danger. Currently, the major star areas have formed a union. They are discussing how to deal with the God Clan. You're the representative of the bloodthirsty force. You have to join the meeting and voice your opinion. It's Frederick who asked you to come here again? Shi Yang shot him a look. Shang Chen nodded embarrassedly. He's confined. It's hard to do anything else. He asked me to represent him and tell you the information. How generous you guys are when you give me one day to arrange my stuff, Shi Yang sneered. We're in a rushed situation, Shang Chen explained with a forced smile. Okay, I got it. One day it is. I also want to see how the grand meeting of the unity of the major star areas is. It's a good chance to widen my knowledge, though. Chapter 1234, Fulfill the Promise. Chapter 1234, Fulfill the Promise, _ Immortal Island. The Yang family's mansion still stood firm. It just looked a little shabby. Yang Tian Emperor stood inside the mansion that was covered in spider webs and dust, silent for a long time. Emotions swarmed him. He sighed, it has been too many years. The members of the Yang family and the Shi family also were very emotional. They didn't think that after moving around the cosmos, they would have to return to their starting point. Life was strange, indeed. Xia Xin Yang was standing in this crowd. Her bright eyes were dispirited. She looked lonely as she sighed. The Xia family and the Yang family had been friends for many generations. Because of the incident in Divine Greatland, they had become strangers. Xia Qing who went in the wrong direction as they didn't want to stay on the same side as the Yang family. Eventually, the Xia family declined. Shi Yang's people were the ones who stood and laughed at the end of the battle in the perpetual night forest. However, he didn't massacre the Xia family that year. 200 years had passed quietly. Many members of the Xia family couldn't break through to the next realm, so they had to slowly die naturally. Xia Xinyang didn't know where the other members were living. She felt so bitter. Seeing the Yang family and the Shi family walk to new heights compared to the Xia family, she felt so sour that she couldn't even utter a word. Right at this moment, someone held her hand. She turned around to look at Shi Yang. There are still many members of the Xia family on this continent, he smiled at her. Where? Xia Xinyang's beautiful eyes brightened. I'll take you there. A light passage appeared. Shi Yang took Xia Xinyang through it. They flashed and disappeared from the Immortal Island. The Reincarnation Island in Jioluo Sea area was the place where the Xia family was staying. This small island had many bushes of wild grass. Standing at the southeast corner were big halls and buildings made of flaming red stone. Dozens of young warriors of the Xia family were practicing on the training yard. Xia Yi was one of them. He was at Disaster Realm and he was practicing martial arts together with some other young members of the Xia family. A crook-backed old man sat at the corner of the training yard and nodded his head as he watched Xia Yi. Xia Yi stopped practicing his martial arts and walked to the old man. Precursor Ju, I heard that you've lived for more than 200 years. What happened to the Xia family in Divine Great Land 200 years ago? Ju Yu darkened his face and snorted, why are you asking about such nonsense? The Reincarnation Island is the root of the Xia family. It has always been like that. The Xia family has never come to Divine Great Land. Why does our great-grandfather sigh and say every time that if we hadn't chosen the wrong side, we would have left a long time ago? Xia Yi lowered his voice and murmured, I heard that the real hero had left many years ago from here to outer space. Rumors said that if we hadn't chosen the wrong way, our Xia family would have led them to enter the Sea of Stars. Is it true? Ju Yu was irritated. He shouted at the young man, don't talk such nonsense. He lifted his head to look at the sky and sighed inwardly. It has been many years, our young lady. I wonder if she still survives. Our head doesn't have much time. I hope he can meet her one last time. He stood up and walked by himself to the mountain behind the Xia family. Inside a cave mansion behind the mountain, Xia Shenchuan was sitting cross-legged to document the martial techniques that he had learned. His vitality had weakened gradually, so he had to write down all the techniques he had learned throughout his life with the hope of leaving some legacy to the Xia family. His father, Xia Qing, who had gone with the Pure Land that year. In the end, the Pure Land was defeated and ran away. His father took them back to the Endless Sea. Since that day, Xia Qing, who was always dismal. And later on, his strange illness had occupied him one more time. As the earth and heaven energy in this area was reduced, Xia Qing who couldn't advance his realm further. Gradually, he died from exhaustion. Before he died, his sound mind came back to him for a moment and he had reminded his children about his mistake. Headmaster, Ju Yu came forward. Xia Shenchuan lifted his head and smiled, why don't you supervise the kids in the training yard? Headmaster, you should continue to insist on it. As soon as you can reach True God Realm, your longevity will increase. You can live more. Maybe you will see our young lady come home. Xia Shenchuan shook his head with a forced smile, don't advise me furthermore. I'm sure I can't break through anymore. It's better to save my remaining time to document more martial arts for the kids. Headmaster, it's different now. Don't you feel like the spirit qi in the Endless Sea is much thicker than in the past? You still have time. If you're still wasting your time and effort in writing down those martial techniques, you will not have any chance. Ju Yu said, if little Yang knew you were like this, she would have felt very disappointed. Xia Shenchuan quivered, his hand trembling as he was writing. He said miserably, more than 200 years. When little Yang left through the space crack inside Fire and Ice Secret Domain that year, I knew she couldn't survive. Dangers are everywhere in outer space. If she's still alive, she would have come back soon. Crack. The stone at the cave entrance was broken. Xia Shenchuan and Ju Yu unconsciously turned around to look. They were shocked immediately, their old eyes watery. They were so bewildered as they pointed at the ones who had just arrived, but they couldn't make a sound. Xia Xin Yang stood by the cave entrance, tears lingering in her beautiful eyes. She sobbed, Grandfather. Little Yang, it's little Yang, am I dizzy? Xia Shenchuan felt like he had a dying flash of lucidity. He glowed in health and dashed out of the cave. It's me. It's really me, Xia Xinyang cried and tried to talk. It had been so long time. She wanted to go home, but she didn't have a chance. The space passages connecting Agate Star area to other star areas were sealed or full of dangers. She wasn't strong enough to go home, so she could only embrace and hide her nostalgia in her heart. Today, her homeland had come to Agate Star area directly. Since they were in the same star area, she had finally had a chance to visit her homeland. It had been 200 years. Xia Xinyang couldn't hold herself when she knew that her family members were still alive. Shi Yang stood at a corner behind the mountain and watched the cave mansion. He didn't step in. Before he had reached incipient God realm, he had visited Sky Meteor City, the Endless Sea, and Divine Great Land once. From that trip, he knew that the Xia family was staying in the Reincarnation Island, but he didn't visit them. It would have been on the same day. That year, it was Xia Qing who had betrayed them to follow the Pure Land. Although this person had died a long time ago, Shi Yang still had a knot with the Xia family. Thus, even though he had brought Xia Xinyang back here to let her reunite with her family, he didn't want to meet them. After a long time, Xia Shenchuan and Ju Yu appeared at the cave entrance and looked at him from a distance. Xia Shenchuan bowed to him and said loudly, "On behalf of the Xia family, I want to deliver our apology to the Yang family." Ju Yu eyed Shi Yang. He was filled with astonishment. From Xia Xinyang, he knew Shi Yang's realm and status now. Compared to the man he knew in the past, the young man standing in front of him was a representative of miracles. Many members of the Xia family heard Xia Shenchuan's voice. They were surprised and they gathered from different areas. Xia Yi was one of them. He dashed and saw a young man standing in the valley. That man looked around his age, 20-something. He was wearing black clothes, his long hair draped over his shoulder as he showcased his majestic figure and harsh bearings. The Yang family? Is that the family of the prodigy that people have talked about? He's the one who had delivered many strong clans in our continent to outer space. He's the immortal legend of our continent. Xia Yi screamed in fear. Shi Yang, my grandfather said sorry. Do you still hold the grudge? Xia Xinyang thinned her lips, her eyes bright. Shi Yang. I think I heard this name before. The Yang family and Shi Yang. Is he that man of the legend? Is that really him? The one who has escaped to outer space? The members of the Xia family were boisterous. They looked at Shi Yang as if he was their idol. The name Shi Yang was a legend in this era. He was an idol and a hero in many people's minds. In every corner of the continent, warriors from every clan knew this name. This man had brought their precursors and seniors out of this land and entered the cosmos. At that time, they weren't strong enough, so they weren't qualified to come with the others. However, their precursors had told them that when they were strong enough, they could get the right to enter outer space. Their precursors asked them to memorize this name and told them all of these events were possible because of an extraordinary expert who had brought hope to this exhausted continent. Xia Yi and all of the members of the Xia family gazed at the man without even blinking. Shi Yang's brows furrowed and then stretched. With you here, how could I hold such a grudge? Xia Xinyang felt so sweet. Then how about this reincarnation island? She hesitated. Xia Shenchuan and Ju Yu knew the secret, so they clenched their fists anxiously. From Xia Xinyang, they knew many marvelous secrets of the continent. They knew the Endless Sea would be the most attractive place in the entire universe. It would attract many warriors from outer space to come and cultivate. Each square meter here would be worth a whole divine crystal load. If Shi Yang nodded, it would be the huge fortune to the Xia family, which could affect the Xia family for the next 10,000 years. All right, Shi Yang sighed, you guys can stay and cultivate in this island. Xia Shenchuan and Ju Yu were thrilled. They honestly bowed to him. I'm leaving. Shi Yang nodded to Xia Xinyang as he was about to leave. You have to leave tomorrow, so stay with me today. Xia Xinyang's bright eyes moved as she walked to him and hooked his arm. They flashed and disappeared. In the next moment, Shi Yang and Xia Xinyang reappeared in a forest on the beach of the Reincarnation Island. As soon as they landed, she kissed Shi Yang passionately. Her snow-white arms wrapped around his neck, her sexy body leaning against his. Her bright eyes were dreamy as her soft body arched toward him. She aroused his lusty desire. Biting her succulent red lips, she breathed out the orchid fragrance. You're stronger than me today. It's time to fulfill my promise that year. Her graceful body spun one round, releasing herself from her clothes. Her perfect body like the jade was exposed. Shi Yang's eyes were scorching. Seeing the woman jumped onto his lap, he thundered huskily and hugged her, enjoying their time passionately. Chapter 1235, The Tsunami Chamber of Commerce. Chapter 1235, The Tsunami Chamber of Commerce. Ancient God Continent. A limestone cave ran directly into the earth where it was filled with heat waves. It had so many lava ponds filled with scorching red liquid. The energy fluctuations in this area were dense and powerful. This limestone cave was so spacious. It was like a small world with millions of lava ponds. Vaguely, they formed a magical formation. A figure was soaking in a scorching pond, his face handsome and resolute even though he was closing his eyes. He opened his eyes and shot dark red lights. The lights had triggered the power of the restriction in the cave. Instantaneously, all the lava ponds in the cave began to boil. Then the lava in the pond gathered and created flaming ribbons. They flew out of the lava ponds, consecutively winding around his naked body. The flaming scarlet ribbons had refined his spirit and body. It extracted the contamination in his blood to increase his power. The lava pond quickly dried up. Within dozens of seconds, millions of lava ponds were exhausted. However, after 1 hour, new lava came and filled the ponds from the earth core. Once the lava ponds were refilled, the young man continued to use his secret technique to gather the flaming liquid and make them ribbons to quench his body and soul to perfect himself. A shadow appeared like a ghost or a wisp of a soul. He stood inside the limestone cave and looked at the young man in the biggest pond. After a long time, he snorted and called, "Haig." The young man lifted his head, red flames flashing in his eyes. He resumed his calmness. His naked body floated up and he addressed the other respectfully, "Elder." Feng Ju looked at him coldly. "Did you reflect on your mistakes on the ancient continent?" Haig nodded. "I know I was wrong." "What is your mistake?" Feng Ju furrowed his brows. "I had underestimated my opponent's competence," Haig pondered and said. Feng Ju studied him, his eyes evil and bizarre. After a while, he said coldly, "You've reached incipient God realm and refined your body here. Your power Upanishad has advanced too. Anyway, that Shiyang is standing in your way. You must kill him yourself. The others can't help you. Only defeating him and breaking his soul altar can help you advance further on your path of cultivating power Upanishad." 10 years ago, Haig had 1 foot into incipient God realm. His realm, power, and body had been qualified to enter the new realm. However, to be eligible to enter Desolate for the Genesis fruit, he had forcefully pressed down his realm. He had lingered at peak of ethereal God realm during the whole trip. When he came back from Desolate, he didn't restrain his power anymore. Shortly after, he had entered incipient God realm. He had used a secret technique to refine his soul and body. His soul altar was refined 1 more time. His realm and power Upanishad all upgraded. However, the failure on the ancient continent had created a Mara in his heart. It affected his moods and it cracked in his arrogant confidence. Feng Ju knew that this crack would affect his realm in the future and make his fast progress stagnate. Haig had fused with the origin of ancient God continent. He was going to become an assurance for the prosperity of the God clan in the future. Feng Ju wasn't going to allow Haig to fail again. He knew where Haig's illness was rooted. "Go to Tsunami Star. The one you want to kill is there. As soon as you destroy him, you can secure your state of mind. I will never fail you again," Haig answered. With a harsh gleam crossing his eyes, he mumbled to himself, "Shiyang, I hope you're well prepared." The God-blessed mainland. Audrey had woken up for a long time, but she still used the evil souls to nurture her host soul. The incipient extent she had created was a murky grey world. It had cold energy fluctuations that could terrify people. This kind of yin energy ran directly into people's souls as if it could freeze the other's soul altar. After a long time, she opened her beautiful eyes and smiled. "Mother, I've broken through to incipient God realm." Adele smiled lovingly at her. "With your innate talents, I'm not surprised that you can reach incipient God realm early. How do you feel?" Audrey closed her eyes to sense her body. She answered happily, "Excellent." "Oh right, did somebody help me by giving me many souls while I was cultivating? When I was condensing the incipient extent, I could feel my soul alter change, so I used our secret technique to refine it once. Yeah, something changed while you were cultivating. Adele's eyes brightened. As you've done before, you should go to Tsunami Star and buy some divine liquids to improve your soul altar. Audrey stood up and nodded. She was about to leave immediately. She had visited Tsunami Star many times. She knew how to get there. It had started when she had reached King God Realm. After she entered the new realm, she went to Tsunami Star to find marvelous liquids to strengthen her soul altar. The soul altar training method of the Imperial Dark Tribe was unique. Every time their soul altars evolved, they needed some special liquids to secure it. Wait a minute, Adele called to her and frowned. I heard that the forces of the star areas where the God Clan has invaded were having a secret summit meeting in the Tsunami Star. Many people with different purposes will go there too. You should be careful. I will. I will assign Gillette to go with you. Oh, do I need to go with Gillette this time? Sure you do. Okay. Tsunami Star. It was a massive level 7 life star. This life star was the life star that ranked only behind the ancient continent in the level of thick earth and heaven energy. It stayed in the center of Tsunami Star area and was surrounded by dozens of life stars like stars surrounding the bright moon. There was a sea territory near Tsunami Star where millions of battleships and spaceships from different star areas embarked and disembarked. Every day, billions of warriors from many races came here. The sea territory of Tsunami Star was acknowledged as the liveliest wonderland of this universe. It was much wealthier and more bustling than any sea territory of the God Clan. All of this was because of a force at Tsunami Star area, the Tsunami Chamber of Commerce. The Tsunami Chamber of Commerce was similar to Potion and Tool Pavilion. They were specialized in collecting and trading materials. The Tsunami Chamber of Commerce also bought and sold crystals, divine weapons, power Upanishad source of inheritance, beast bones and souls, and even life stars. The structure of this Chamber of Commerce was much bigger than Potion and Tool Pavilion. Compared to Tsunami Chamber of Commerce, Potion and Tool Pavilion was like a small ant standing by an elephant. They weren't at the same level. The Tsunami Chamber of Commerce had business affairs around star areas in this cosmos. Even if it was a small corner of the universe, the warriors could still find their stores. If the clan or force wasn't closed and conservative, it knew about the Tsunami Chamber of Commerce's existence and create a close and complex connection with this Chamber of Commerce. If Potion and Tool Pavilion's business covered the entire Agate Star area, Tsunami Chamber of Commerce's affairs had covered the entire universe. Tsunami Chamber of Commerce and the ruling echelons of big star areas had a harmonious relationship. The forces of Hollow Fearsome Star Area, Prosaic Star Area, Earth Eye Star Area, Sirius Star Area, Black River Star Area, and other star areas had trading affairs with this Chamber of Commerce. Even the families of the God Clan had to have a close connection with this organization. This Chamber of Commerce didn't join any war in the Sea of Stars. Just like a genuine businessman, it only collected and sold materials in the star areas. At the same time, no one wanted to offend this Chamber of Commerce. Even the brutal God Clan didn't dare to attack its stores. Many people had guessed that Tsunami Chamber of Commerce had a close-knit relationship with the God Clan. They thought that perhaps the mysterious president of Tsunami Chamber of Commerce was one of the elders of the God Clan's Elder Committee. There were many rumors about the mysterious president of Tsunami Chamber of Commerce. Some said that he was from Immortal Demon Clan while others rumored that he was from Heavenly Monster Tribe. This man was so mysterious. He had secluded to cultivate all the time. Many experts of the influent forces wanted to meet him once, but they were all denied. Not many people had the chance to know his real name too. They heard that this Chamber of Commerce had existed for dozens of thousands of years ago. It had witnessed the four great creatures take turns to be the overlord and the rise of the bloodthirsty force. The president of this Tsunami Chamber of Commerce was always mysterious in each generation. However, they were all geniuses that could bring the Chamber of Commerce to their glory today. Besides the sea territory for the battleships to travel, there were many space teleport formations around the planet. Although the space teleport formations could teleport only creatures and not giant battleships, the four areas of the space teleport formations were hectic like running water. Every day, Experts from many star areas could come or leave through the formations. The teleport formations were much more convenient than the sea territory because they could go directly to the destination without traveling further as when using the sea territory. The 4 areas of the teleport formation on Tsunami Chamber of Commerce were called Heaven, Earth, Black, and Yellow. Each area had dozens of differently sized formations. Some could teleport only 1 or 2 passengers, while the massive formations could transport 1,000 or 1,000,000 passengers at a time. Of course, anyone who wanted to use the formation in the Heaven, Earth, Black, and Yellow areas had to pay with divine crystals. Tsunami Chamber of Commerce collected fees, and the fees varied based on the capacity of the formation and the distance. Today, a small, normal-looking teleport formation in Black teleport area of the Tsunami Chamber of Commerce glowed up. The formation emitted waves of vague energy. This formation was strange. It was rectangular shaped with 4 statues of savage beasts watching the 4 corners. Those monster statues had empty fantasy crystals in their mouths. Their deep eyes sparkled together with the divine crystals under their feet. When the strange formation glowed, the 4 statues roared. The roaring ceased. The divine crystals under the beasts' feet turned into ashes and scattered. 2 people appeared. The Tsunami Chamber of Commerce's staff stood by the formation. They fluently took out new divine crystals to replace the ashes underneath the monster. The formation was ready to use again. A guard holding a shining black stone in his hand talked to them. Submit 3,000 top-quality divine crystals. Chen smiled and raised his hand. A bright yellow cloud flew up and carried a lot of divine crystals that were sparkling under the sunlight of 9 dazzling suns in the sky. What do you think? He turned to Yang. Along the way, he had briefed Yang on the situation of the Tsunami Chamber of Commerce, but it wasn't very detailed. He wanted Yang to observe it himself. Yang turned to look at the magical formation behind him. He was astounded. They used the monster's souls to carve the formation. The person who had designed and built this formation was very excellent and creative. Tsunami Chamber of Commerce has many warriors cultivating space power Upanishad. One of them has reached 3rd sky of incipient god realm. He's stronger than Bello. The Chamber of Commerce's teleport formations are built by their staff who cultivate space power Upanishad. Besides this place, they have 3 other areas that are similar to here with dozens of big and small teleport formation, explained Chen. This Chamber of Commerce is very powerful, Yang nodded. Chapter 1236, Black Iron City. Chapter 1236, Black Iron City. South of Tsunami Star. Many majestic cities built like mountain ranges stood imposingly. Those cities were spacious like giant beasts crouching on the ground. Under the 9 suns, the cities had beautiful halos of iron or jade. This planet had 9 suns and 6 moons. It was so hot in the daylight and bitter cold when the night fell. However, whether it was day or night, the Tsunami Star was illuminating all the time. There was no absolute darkness. There was a city called Black Iron in the south that was built of celestial jet black iron. It was one of the 9 cities of Tsunami Star. There was a teleport formation in the forest outside the city leading to the black area of Tsunami Star. Usually, warriors from other star areas entered Black Iron City first after they teleported here through the black area. Tsunami Star had 9 cities and each of them was a big trading center with countless shops. At least half of those shops belonged to the Tsunami Chamber of Commerce and the remaining belonged to many other forces. The Tsunami Star was the most famous business center in the universe. People could buy any cultivating materials at any grade. Even original incipient grade materials weren't rare in this city. It could be said that if something couldn't be found in Tsunami Star, it wouldn't be found elsewhere. The 9 cities of Tsunami Star were arranged in each corner. Each of them was so grand they attracted many warriors from other star areas to come trade. Tsunami Star was where warriors could buy anything including cultivating materials, mineral lodes, mine slaves, and even the life stars. Rumors said that Tsunami Chamber of Commerce used to sell an entire star area. Inside a strange chamber in a training building in Black Iron City, 2 people were cultivating. The ceiling of this chamber had inlaid many 7-colored divine crystals arranged in a particular formation. With a close look, the divine crystals were arranged to create the word water. The tranquilizing energy rippled from that word to help warriors concentrate better. This chamber didn't have a solid ground. There was a water pond that was crystal clear with murmuring water. This chamber was designed to increase the power comprehension of the warriors who cultivated water power Upanishad. It was a special training chamber built by Tsunami Chamber of Commerce. They let the warriors cultivating water power rent this kind of training chamber to cultivate. There were so many similarly customized training chambers including fire, ice, lightning, and all the common powers Upanishads. These special cultivating rooms were aimed at the warriors from different races to accelerate their progress of accumulating energy and advancing their power. These kinds of training buildings were categorized in different levels with different fees. Tsunami Chamber of Commerce managed all of them, and the year-round turnover from this business wasn't something ordinary people could imagine. Inside this water chamber, the pond had many water heart crystals. They were crystals that looked like a heart. A sexy woman was cultivating in the pond and taking in the energy of the water heart crystals to refine her body. She was like a drop of water that became a part of this cultivating room to understand the water power. Sitting by the pond was a white-haired woman. Her eyes were closed as if she was sleeping. After a while, she opened her eyes and revealed glum pupils as if she had to bear a lot of grief. She looked at the melting water heart crystals in the pond and said to the other woman, "It's good now. Your incipient god realm is stable." The sexy woman in the pond was Cecilia. After Desolate had thrown her out, she went directly to Tsunami Star to meet her teacher. She wanted to tell her the events that happened on Desolate and then went directly to Agate Star area. However, Lena, her teacher, had forced her to stay. Cecilia had to use water heart crystals to refine her realm and enter incipient god realm. Before entering Desolate, Cecilia's realm was third sky of ethereal god realm. After 10 years of training on Desolate, her state of mind, will, and understanding of power had gotten over the bottleneck. Also, she was so lucky to collect original incipient grade crystals of water class, the water heart crystal. She got all the things she needed for her breakthrough. Lena had ordered her strictly that she should seize the chance to break through. She had to stay. Under her teacher's protection, she used the special water cultivating room to cultivate and break through to incipient god realm. Lena had collected the magical materials needed to stabilize her incipient god realm from Tsunami Chamber of Commerce. After taking in the power of the water heart crystals, Cecilia's realm was stabilized. Her mind wasn't going to fall in trouble anymore. "Teacher, my realm is stable today. Will you let me go?" Cecilia smiled charmingly as her naked body emerged from the pond. Her skin was like beautifully smooth white jade. She was so eye-catching, like a ripe peach that arose people's desires. "You want to go to Agate Star area to find the young man called Shiyang?" Lena snorted. "It's very difficult for me to find a guiding fruit for you. I expected you to find his remains for me. You didn't do that and instead did something with that man. Now, you tell me that you want to go find him? Tell me, did you even care about your teacher?" "No, I want to find him to talk about that," Cecilia hurried to explain. "He and I had gotten into that strange world, but I was kicked out unknowingly. He must have been kept there. Many things had happened after that continuously, so I didn't have a chance to ask him about that until I was thrown out of Desolate." "You said that you were thrown out but he wasn't." Lena was surprised. "I'm sure about that," Cecilia said earnestly. "When he fought Hassan, I saw his ethereal extent, which was 70% or even 80% similar to the world that I had intruded. I think he had merged that world into his ethereal extent." Lena was shocked. Cecilia nodded. Lena quieted down and contemplated. After a while, she said faintly, "Then, you don't need to go to Agate Star area. Lately, the God Clan attacked the forces that had helped him counter the God Clan in Agate Star area. Their leaders have come to Tsunami Star. If nothing unexpected happens, the boy you've mentioned should be there too." "Why will he come to Tsunami Star?" Cecilia was surprised. "Because it's safest here. After dozens of thousands of years, Although the four great creatures have always been fighting, this planet hasn't been affected. Whether it's the immortal demon clan, imperial dark tribe, the god clan, or heavenly monster tribe, or even the bloodthirsty force at their peak of glory, they have never attacked Tsunami Star. Thus, when small forces want to have some secret meetings, the god clan could capture them at once. But if they do that on Tsunami Star, and even if their information is disclosed, the god clan can't attack them immediately, explained Len. Teacher, you've met the president of the Tsunami Chamber of Commerce. Who is he after all? Why does even the god clan not dare to touch Tsunami Chamber of Commerce? Tsunami Chamber of Commerce's water is really deep. That president is also mysterious and unpredictable. I can't guess what mysteries he embraces. If Shi Yang goes to Tsunami Star, how can I meet him? Go find Sho Jiao of the Gu God sect. They're in Black Iron City now. When you meet them, you will also meet the one you wanted to find. Oh, thank you. Sho Jiao of the Gu God sect, Wu Feng and Wu Bai of the Wu family, Jiao Shan and Jiao Hai of the Jiao family, Mo Fu, and Fuller were staying in a mansion in Black Iron City. Accompanying them were leaders of all kinds of forces. This medium-sized mansion was hosting the real leaders of the major star areas. All of a sudden, an old man wearing a cyan brocade costume with a crystal embroidered on the hem and dark green hair draping around his shoulder came with some warriors. The Black Iron City branch manager of Tsunami Chamber of Commerce Tai Dun is coming. A third sky of ethereal god realm warrior standing behind the old man pitched his voice, which had an unconcealed arrogant tone. Being the city guard of Black Iron City of Tsunami Chamber of Commerce, he was respected in every star area he had visited. Also, the leaders and tycoons of many forces had to respect him because he was part of the Tsunami Chamber of Commerce's staff. He considered it his honor. The Tsunami Chamber of Commerce had stood still for dozens of thousands of years in this sea of stars. It had started in a small star area and expanded to the entire cosmos. It had become a special force in this universe. Even the four great creatures didn't dare to challenge them in their peak of power. It was the solid confidence of Tsunami Chamber of Commerce and the honor of each member of this incredible organization. The leaders of the forces staying in the mansion were startled when they heard that Tai Dun, the Black Iron City manager, wanted to meet them. Great Elder Mu Wei of the Gu God sect was a man with an aquiline nose and a sinister appearance. He frowned and looked at the crowd in the secret chamber. He asked, "Who contacted Tai Dun? How come he knows we're gathering here?" Bai Yi Feng was Black Wind's sworn brother in Black River Star area. He said naturally, "You guys have underestimated Tsunami Chamber of Commerce. They know every small commotion on Tsunami Star. There aren't many secrets that can be concealed from Tsunami Chamber of Commerce or their mysterious president." Jiao Mu of the Jiao family discolored. "If Tsunami Chamber of Commerce knows we're here, I suppose the God Clan does too. I heard that the mysterious president of this Chamber of Commerce has some relationship with the God Clan. If he joins the God Clan to ambush us, aren't we in the tiger's mouth now?" Bai Yi Feng waved his hand. If Tsunami Chamber of Commerce and the God Clan walk the same path, the number of the star areas that the God Clan has been invading isn't a small one. Frankly speaking, if Tsunami Chamber of Commerce joined hands with the God Clan, our star areas would have become their vassals for sure. Hearing him, everybody quieted down to contemplate his opinions. After a while, they nodded in agreement. They thought that Bai Yi Feng wasn't just exaggerating. Tsunami Chamber of Commerce does have this weight. Don't make assumptions. Let's hear what Tai Dun will say. Bai Yi Feng stood up. His figure flashed and disappeared from the secret chamber. He walked directly to the garden in the mansion and raised his voice. "Hey, Tai Dun, my old friend. Long time no see." The others hesitated and stayed in the chamber for a moment before getting out to greet the guests with Bai Yi Feng. At the same time, Shong Chen and Shi Yang were staying in front of a city gate of black iron. They had to submit divine crystal to get into the city. After making the payment, they stepped in. Too bustling and lively, Shi Yang couldn't hold his compliments as soon as he raked his eyes around the street. Of course, Tsunami Star hasn't been affected by the war for dozens of thousands of years. No one could know how much money and fame it has accumulated. As it's the heart of this universe, How could it not be rich? Smiled Shang Chen. Chapter 1237, A Small Jade Box. Chapter 1237, A Small Jade Box. In front of the mansion, Bai Yifeng, Jiao Mu, and Mu Wei welcomed the manager of the Black Iron, Tai Dun. This mansion was 100 mu wide with man-made mountains, pavilions, and bridges over small streams. The internal roads were gravelled elegantly. Tai Dun walked with Bai Yifeng deep inside the mansion. Standing by a small rockery, he smiled and talked to Bai Yifeng. This time, you've been so discreet when you come to Black Iron City. You almost got me. Bai Yifeng and Tai Dun were friends. Bai Yifeng had done business with Black Iron City on behalf of Black River Star area for hundreds of years. He had bought many weapons, battleships, and armor from Tsunami Chamber of Commerce to increase the competence of Black River Star area. Tai Dun was the branch manager in Black Iron City. He had personally handled Bai Yifeng's business every time he came. Great Elder Mu Wei of the Jiu God sect and Jiao Mu of the Jiao family weren't friends with Tai Dun. Their long-term partner wasn't Black Iron City. They were partnered with other cities on this tsunami star. Tai Dun had only first sky of incipient god realm and he cultivated wind power Upanishad. His line of sight glided past Mu Wei and Jiao Mu, his eyes strange. Brother, why did you pay me a visit this time? Bai Yifeng pondered for a while and then directly talked about the matter. The guards behind Tai Dun had left already. Even Shuo Zhao and Wu Feng weren't qualified to come to this place. Tai Dun spoke with a smile. My superior asked me to deliver an item. Bai Yifeng was astounded. Tai Dun looked serious when he took a deep breath and carefully took out a small jade box from his sleeve. The jade box glowed in a dim halo with a refreshing aroma. This kind of aroma could refresh and calm down people's minds. Heavenly fragrant soul-soothing jade. Mu Wei of the Jiu God sect hissed as he looked dumbstruck. It's true. This jade box is made of heavenly fragrant soul-soothing jade, Tai Dun said with a smile. Bai Yifeng, Jiao Mu, and Mu Wei were surprised. They focused on the jade box created by the heavenly fragrant soul-soothing jade. Heavenly fragrant soul-soothing jade was an original incipient grade material. In this vast universe, this could only be produced in a remote place in heavenly fragrant star area. This jade called heavenly fragrant soul-soothing jade was the top precious treasure of heavenly fragrant star area. Because of this jade, heavenly fragrant star area had changed its owner several times. Currently, the God clan held on to it. Heavenly fragrant soul-soothing jade was precious with magical effects. When people who cultivated power Upanishad held a piece of this jade in their hands, they could ensure their sound minds and placid souls. This jade protected their spirit and soul. A small piece of heavenly fragrant soul-soothing jade could be used several times. With this jade in their hands, they could ensure their chance of a smooth breakthrough. This kind of heavenly fragrant soul-soothing jade was precious in the forces and races around the major star areas. Even the leaders of the big forces couldn't have this kind of jade. Besides the tranquilizing function, the heavenly fragrant soul-soothing jade could be used to preserve items that would never rot. Who should I deliver it to? Bai Yifeng couldn't read Tai Dun's mind. Instinctively, he rose his hand to receive the jade box. When Tai Dun was about to hand the jade box to Bai Yifeng, he suddenly paused and gazed at him. To the one you are waiting for. Bai Yifeng was surprised. Mu Wei and Jiao Mu were astounded. Then, all of them turned solemn and looked at Tai Dun. Don't ask me why. My superior asked me to do that. My superior also advised that only that man is eligible to open this box. Tai Dun smiled and put the jade box into Bai Yifeng's hand. So, please help me, Bai Ge. Bai Yifeng was dumbstruck and he frowned deeply. Yeah, that's all for today. I'm not going to bother you guys anymore. Tai Dun nodded to greet them. No need to see me off. He walked out directly. After he gathered his guards, they all left the mansion. They had baffled the others when they came and even when they left. Bai Yifeng held the jade box. He was filled with surprise. He didn't say anything after pondering for a long time. Mu Wei and Jiao Mu eyed the jade box, their faces odd. Tsunami Chamber of Commerce often does weird stuff. I can't understand anything. Wu Lai of the Wu family was fierce. He couldn't help but shout and then snatch the box. He mumbled, I want to see what's so precious. He said we weren't qualified to see it. Bai Yifeng was still absorbed in his thought. He couldn't react when Wu Lai suddenly seized the box from his hand. He then saw Wu Lai open the lid. Boom, boom, boom. Wu Lai suddenly backed off 3 steps. The stone ground under his foot exploded and collapsed. 3 waves of tremors expanded to the entire mansion. The pavilions around him collapsed. He was so frightened. Fear arose deep in his eyes. He bewilderedly looked at the jade box on the ground, his heart beating frantically. Mu Wei, Jiao Mu, and Bai Yifeng were so frightened. They looked at the small jade box on the ground with fear. They then observed Wu Lai trying to conceal the shock in his heart. Wu Lai had second sky of incipient God realm cultivation base, and he had ascetically cultivated space power Upanishad. He was a famous warrior of the Wu family. At his realm, it surprisingly took a lot of efforts to open that jade box. Wu Lai, what happened? Asked Bai Yifeng sternly. Wu Lai was aghast. He took a deep breath and then looked at the jade box in fear. When I was about to open it, a terrifying force had struck my soul altar and almost exploded it. Hearing him, people grimaced. They felt worried when looking at the small jade box. The soul altar was the root and life of a warrior. When it shattered, the warrior's soul perished altogether. At second sky of incipient God realm, Wu Lai's soul altar had almost broken. What did that box contain? Bai Yifeng's countenance changed unusually. He hesitated for a while and then gingerly covered the piece of rock with the jade on it. He put it on the meeting hall and said solemnly, Tai Dun gave us this item and asked us to deliver it to Shiyang. We should just give it to him then. Guys, don't touch it. People nodded with a forced smile. Headquarters of Tsunami Chamber of Commerce, Black Iron City. The cities of Tsunami Star didn't have city masters. Tsunami Chamber of Commerce assigned their staff to manage the cities because this entire star belonged to them. The Chamber of Commerce had built all those cities. Thus, the headquarters of Tsunami Chamber of Commerce in each city was actually the City Master's Palace. After Tai Dun had bid farewell to Bai Yifeng, he didn't stop along the way. Leaving his guards behind, his figure flashed and returned to the headquarters directly. He entered the secret underground chamber, which was so spacious. Standing in the middle of the room was a massive vertical mirror. A gold light emerged in the middle of Tai Dun's forehead, shining directly on that mirror. The reflection in the mirror changed. A changing shadow slowly emerged in the mirror. However, it continuously twisted and people couldn't see its appearance clearly. I delivered the box to Bai Yifeng of Black River Star area, reported Tai Dun, his face respectful as he bowed. Yeah, follow them. Once you spot something unusual, report it to me immediately, a husky male voice came from the mirror. Yes, sir, Tai Dun replied. The energy fluctuating in the mirror disappeared. Everything resumed. Tai Dun furrowed his brows and he mumbled, "What's in that box?" Then, he coughed terribly as he had to take out a long-sized pellet and swallowed it. His face looked malicious at this moment. Just like Wu Lai, he couldn't control his curiosity when he had just received the box. He opened it to see what it held. His situation was even worse than Wu Lai's. Both of his hands were almost broken. If he wasn't the manager of Chamber of Commerce and had many precious pellets, his hands would have been disabled. As he was at first sky of incipient God realm, he wasn't as strong as Wu Lai. Thus, his wounds were much more severe. The item that the president wanted to give to the bloodthirsty force's successor isn't ordinary at all. Tai Dun took a deep breath. Although he had fear in his eyes, he hesitated before making up his mind. He activated the mirror once again. The magical light flashed from the mirror. Not long after that, the mirror showed a senile face. Tai Dun's face brightened. He said respectfully, "Elder Feng Ju." Surprisingly, the man shown in the mirror was Elder Feng Ju of the God Clan's Elder Committee who held supreme power in the God Clan. "You must have something if you called me. Tell me, what business is it?" Feng Ju squinted. As long as the intelligence you provide is precious enough like the previous times, I won't mistreat you. The president asked me to deliver a jade box to the bloodthirsty force's successor. That box is made of the heavenly fragrant soul-soothing jade. It's so strange. When I attempted to open the box, I got struck by a malicious energy. Both of my hands were almost disabled. Tai Dun pondered and then provided Feng Jun the intelligence. He had done the same for many years. Through a discreet business with the God Clan, he had collected a huge fortune. He had made many business deals with the God Clan in Tsunami Chamber of Commerce, but his sneaky activities hadn't been figured out yet. Feng Ju's squinted eyes flared up with a strange divine light while listening to the Tai Dun. He contemplated for a while and then promised Tai Dun, "I'll send my men to hand you the item you want. It should be enough for you to reach second sky of incipient God realm. You keep watching them for me." "All right," Tai Dun agreed immediately. Ancient God Shrine, Ancient God Continent. Feng Ju was sitting cross-legged by a statue. He opened his eyes, his face grave. The other members of the Elder Committees frowned and looked at him when they saw him awake. Feng Ju pondered for a while and then talked to Spark. "Spark, go to Tsunami Star now." Spark threw him a glance and then stooped. "I have no time." Feng Ju frowned and said, "Perhaps we got a clue to find the thing we have been looking for so many years." Spark's eyes brightened until they became dazzling. "Is it true?" he hissed. Feng Ju nodded. Spark stood up and spoke nonchalantly. "All right, I'm heading there. Don't attack the bloodthirsty force's successor. He's for Hague. Only overcoming him can help Hague inherit our clan prestige and ruling power. He has to do that himself. No one should help him," reminded Feng Ju. Spark snorted. He didn't say he agreed or objected it. After a light sway, he disappeared. Seeing Spark leave, Feng Ju closed his eyes once again. Shortly after, he became like a statue without a soul and it was like he stopped breathing. Chapter 1238, Bloodthirstis Aura. Chapter 1238, Bloodthirstis Aura, _ Black Iron City is really luxurious. It's worthy as the city of Tsunami Chamber of Commerce and the heart of the universe. It lives up to its reputation. Walking on the streets packed with many warriors and the shops, Shi Yang couldn't help but acclaim. Black Iron City was one of the 9 cities on Tsunami Star. However, this city was bigger than Divine Great Land that year. The items showcased on the shelves of the shops could dazzle any person. This city was built of outer space black iron, which was almost unbreakable. Shi Yang had secretly tried and he concluded that normal incipient God Realm experts couldn't break this sort of wall. Tsunami Chamber of Commerce had refined the black iron to make this city extremely tough. Shang Chen was like an elegant and unconventional writer as he explained to Shi Yang a lot of things about Tsunami Chamber of Commerce. Gradually, they reached the mansion where Mu Wei and the others were staying. Flying was prohibited in Black Iron City. Staying in this city, warriors had to follow Tsunami Chamber of Commerce's rules. Thus, it affected their speed greatly. "I'm just in charge of taking you to this place. I won't participate in anything else," Shang Chen said all of a sudden. He gritted his teeth and cursed under his breath before talking to Shi Yang. "After this, I no longer owe your bloodthirsty force anything." Shi Yang was surprised. I didn't force you to do anything. Even if you're mad, you shouldn't vent it on me, right?" Shang Chen nodded and forced a smile. "Well, your bloodthirsty force didn't consider anyone. In the past, you guys had offended and caused grudges against many clans and races from many star areas. You're tough, which is why you could survive until now. This time, no one can say beforehand if the bloodthirsty force could rise one more time. Anyway, I actually don't expect you guys to replace the God Clan." People were walking back and forth like running water. Shi Yang could see the warriors from many different races getting in and out of the shops on the streets. While Shang Chen was talking, he lowered his voice a little bit as if he was afraid of being overheard. "Why do you hate the bloodthirsty force?" Shi Yang frowned. He soon had that feeling. On the ancient continent, Cecilia and Sho Jiao were so frightened when they confirmed his Death Power Upanishad and his bloodthirsty force's successor identity. At the same time, they didn't conceal that they opposed him. If the God clan hadn't wanted to kill all the warriors there, surely, Shuo Jiao, Wu Feng, and the others would have never wanted to go with him. It was his efforts that allowed him to gradually earn their acceptance. He was a sensitive person. After thinking it through, he confirmed that Shuo Jiao and Wu Feng weren't offended by his immortal demon identity. What gave them the conflict was his bloodthirsty force's successor identity. As far as he knew, 10,000 years ago before the God clan, the bloodthirsty force had ruled the universe. Its 8 chiefs were similar to the 12 chiefs of the God clan. They were infamous in each of the major star areas as they were the supernatural experts with outstanding abilities and grand vision. When the precursor of the God clan got the Genesis fruit, the entire clan had been boosted. Then, in the alliance with the other clans and forces around the universe to wholly counter the bloodthirsty force, the God clan had subdued and made the bloodthirsty force's power vanish. It showed the tenaciousness of this force. However, this force was like the God clan now. They couldn't earn respect from the other warriors. They were even worse than the God clan in some aspects. I didn't experience those years, but I know that during the era when the bloodthirsty force was so powerful, creatures in many star areas had to live in misery. Many life stars were shattered and bleak. Shang Chen contemplated for a while and then continued, the great 8 inheritances of the bloodthirsty force only brought death, destruction, darkness, and chaos to this vast sea of stars. In those years wherever they went by, entire life stars didn't even have grass survive. They were much more extreme than the God clan. Shi Yang rubbed his nose and sighed inwardly. The 8 great inheritances of the bloodthirsty force included soul control, death, corrosion, dark, chaos, destruction, despair, and corpse chi. These 8 powers Upanishads were evil and extreme. With these powers Upanishads, of course, the 8 chiefs could be arrogant and tyrannical. They didn't put anybody in their eyes. In that year, when they had massacred everywhere, the God clan could only survive vulnerably. However, it was because they were too haughty that they had to perish in the end. The bloodthirsty force's master had suddenly appeared in this world. No one knows his identity nor which race he is in. His existence had attracted many extreme experts of the immortal demon clan, heavenly monster clan, God clan, and imperial dark clan. They left their tribes and served him as their masters. Even now, the God clan was still investigating his identity. They want to know where he came from and which race he was. The powers Upanishads he cultivated didn't exist in this universe before his arrival. He's the eternal mystery of this sea of stars. Shang Chen studied Shi Yang and then his blood vein ring with a sigh. Shi Yang didn't know what to say, so he kept silent. The bloodthirsty force had done many bad things in the past. Shi Yang understood this. However, he came here from another world. Lao Luo had dragged his soul here and imprinted the vestige of the bloodthirsty force on him. Without the devouring power Upanishad from that master, Shi Yang would never have had his attainment today. He had no way to get rid of the connection with this force. Because of the God clan's existence, if he didn't resist, they were going to kill him. Thus, he didn't have a choice. Although he knew this force was bad, he had to continue his journey. Only smashing the God clan and having his realm surpass all principles of this world would allow him to reconsider the working principles of the bloodthirsty force. He would use his mind and power to change it. When they reached the mansion, Shang Chen stopped and then said, "They are in there. I can only take you here. I won't participate in your activities anymore." Shang Chen left alone before Shi Yang could reply. His back looked lonely, but he looked as if he had just thrown a burden off of his shoulder. As soon as Shi Yang walked into the mansion, Mu Wei, Jiao Mu, and Bai Yifeng walked out of the hall and welcomed him. Shuo Jiao, Wu Feng, Mo Fu, and the other juniors were here too. They greeted him with heavy faces and forced smiles. Their star area was being invaded. They were in a really bad situation and they needed help immediately. They were here to discuss the crucial matter and to get more reinforcements. And Shi Yang represented the force that had a power that no one could deny. They needed help from this force. Last time when we were in Agate Star area, we were in a hurry. This time, let's introduce ourselves properly. Wu Feng was stern. He pointed at the people in the hall and introduced them one by one. My uncle, Wu Lai, is from our Wu family. He's at second sky of incipient god realm cultivating fire power. Precursor Mu Wei, the great elder of the Jiyu god sect. He has cultivated the supernatural Jiyu of the Jiyu god sect at third sky of incipient god realm. Precursor Jiao Mu from the Jiao family. He is at second sky of incipient god realm and cultivates wood power. Bai Yi Feng from Black River Star area. At third sky of incipient god realm, he cultivates lightning power. Sanji, Fuller's uncle, from Earth Eye Star area. He's at second sky of incipient god realm cultivating earth power. Wu Feng introduced the experts in the hall with a respectful face. Each of them nodded to Shi Yang, but they were actually disappointed. Shi Yang had come here alone. They had thought that Shi Yang would come together with some experts of the bloodthirsty force. Those infamous warriors thrilled them. They had even properly prepared to prevent the awkward situation when they finally met the brutal experts. Unfortunately, Shi Yang came alone. It made them so upset. Although Shi Yang was the successor of the bloodthirsty force's master, he hadn't reached that height of realm. Maybe Shi Yang could reach the height that surprised them in the future, but right now, his influence wasn't really significant, which had upset them a lot. This thing, Tai Dun, manager of the Black Iron City, delivered it here personally. He asked me to hand it to you. We guessed that the superior of Tsunami Chamber of Commerce decided to do that. We don't know what this box contains. Bai Yi Feng took the jade box with the rock and threw them to Shi Yang, his face indifferent. Hesitating for a while, Bai Yi Feng said nothing in the end. Wu Feng, Shuo Jiao, and the juniors didn't know about this jade box, so they were so curious. Wu Lai, Mu Wei, and the others quivered a bit as they gazed at Shi Yang and the jade box in his hand. All of them had strange looks. They were discontented because no famous warrior of the bloodthirsty force had come here. They thought that the others looked down on them, so they didn't tell Shi Yang the deadly feature of the small box. They wanted to see Shi Yang tasting the bitter flavor. No one had told him the trap in that box. Tsunami Chamber of Commerce delivered this item. Shi Yang was surprised. He looked baffled when he studied the piece of rock that supported the jade box. He rubbed his chin, grabbed the box and threw away the rock. The jade box felt really heavy in his hand with a cold aura. It didn't look magical or anything else. Contemplating for a while, he rose his hand to open the box. As soon as his finger touched the lid, a terrifyingly brutal force flooded his soul altar as if he had a bucket of water poured on his head. His body trembled and the entire hall was shaken several times. Cracks appeared thickly on the walls. However, Shi Yang stood still at his spot. He didn't back off as Wu Lai did. He looked frightened, but he seemed to control it well, as if he was listening to something. Mu Wei, Wu Lai, and Jiao Mu looked stiff. They were shocked with concealed gleams of fear. Wu Lai, who had remained at second sky of incipient god realm for so many years, had been struck and he had to step back to steady his body. And Shi Yang, the one who had just entered incipient god realm, didn't have to step back. He was as solid as a 10,000 years old rock. From only this event, did this prove that Shi Yang was stronger than Wu Lai? Everybody was astonished. They looked at the lid of the box to see if he had opened it yet. They looked disappointed as the lid of the box didn't even move. The designated person that Tsunami Chamber of Commerce had mentioned couldn't open it. This made the others more curious. I could feel my master's aura. At the same time, Shi Yang heard the ring spirit's voice in his head. The ring spirit had woken after a long time of staying silent. The aura inside the box had wakened it up. Shi Yang furrowed his brows. He held the jade box and asked, "Please arrange me a secret chamber." "Follow me." Shuo Jiao was the first one to react to his request while the others were still baffled. Shi Yang immediately walked after him. Chapter 1239, One Finger. Chapter 1239, One Finger. It was an ordinary stone chamber. "Don't let anyone disturb me," Shi Yang told Shuo Jiao. Shuo Jiao nodded and left the room without a question. Among the group of Wu Feng, Mo Fu, and the Jiao brothers, Sho Jiao was the first one who had a conflict with Shi Yang. When they had just arrived at Desolate, they had fought some deadly battles. Sho Jiao used to hate Shi Yang a lot. At that time, he always wanted to kill Shi Yang. After a series of incidents, they had to join hands to resist against the God clan. When Sho Jiao had been in trouble several times, Shi Yang didn't care about their grudge to save him. Gradually, he had changed Sho Jiao's attitude towards him. When Shi Yang and Audrey had different opinions, Sho Jiao was the first one who decided to follow Shi Yang. The friendship between Sho Jiao and Shi Yang had evolved from hatred. Thus, it was deeper than the relationships between Shi Yang and Wu Feng and Mo Fu. Sho Jiao had changed his mind not only because of Shi Yang's identity. Sho Jiao left the room and then stood indifferently on the stone corridor, his face dark and glum. He could see that Wu Lai and Jiao Mu were discontented because the bloodthirsty force didn't send an expert to the meeting. They were truly disappointed, though. Hollow Fearsome Star area wasn't in good condition now as the God clan was invading them slowly with their power. The influence of the Jiu God sect in Hollow Fearsome Star area was reduced. As time ticked by, many smaller forces in the star area had started favoring the God clan. If the Jiu God sect couldn't show their power and competence that was enough to counter the God clan, more and more forces in their star area would have fallen into the God clan's embrace. The situations of the Wu family and the Jiao family weren't very different. Sho Jiao was also anxious. He didn't care about the threat in his star area, so he came to Tsunami Star discreetly. He understood that if they couldn't gather a force that could overturn the situation, the Jiu God sect's position in Hollow Fearsome Star area was going to be shaken hard. A gold-armored toxic bug buzzed and appeared in front of Sho Jiao. It silently changed and projected the face of the Jiu God sect's great elder Mu Wei. He looked at Sho Jiao and said darkly, "Did you find anything?" Sho Jiao looked at Mu Wei's projection from the insect and frowned nothing. "Our Jiu God sect situation isn't good. We need reinforcements. You're the designated future sect master. I hope you will strive for the Jiu God sect." Mu Wei's face disappeared. The gold armor toxic bug buzzed and disappeared. Sho Jiao wore a dark and glum face. He stood by the door of the stone chamber without talking. After a while, he snorted. Mu Wei was the great elder of the Jiu God sect who he couldn't get along well. He had killed Mu Wei's disciple, the one who had the hope to replace him to be the new star of the Jiu God sect. Because of this, there was always a barrier between Mu Wei and Sho Jiao. However, when they decided to help Agate Star area, Mu Wei was so supportive. He looked even more hurried than Sho Jiao. The sect master was also surprised as he couldn't explain why Mu Wei was so enthusiastic about giving reinforcement to Agate Star area since he had always opposed Sho Jiao's ideas. Sho Jiao knew something was strange here. Mu Wei was the great elder of the Jiu God sect, but he was based year-round in the underworld area in the west of Hollow Fearsome Star area. The underworld was a peculiarly cold area in Hollow Fearsome Star area that even the sect master didn't know what hid in there. Mu Wei used to cultivate for more than 100 years in the underworld. After he had reached incipient god realm and become an elder, he had proactively asked to base in the west area. That far west area was the most desolate area in the entire Hollow Fearsome Star area. All the other elders were afraid of that tough land and only he had asked to stay there. The Jiu God sect's master didn't have a clue. Since then, he had paid attention to that elder. Gale, who had a good relationship with Sho Jiao, was assigned to watch over this. Gale had seized the chance when Mu Wei returned to the headquarters to visit the underworld glacial valley. He had discovered a terrifying thing. Deep in the bitter cold underworld inside a glacier, he saw another Mu Wei. Gale reported this to the sect master. However, the sect master had concealed this and forbidden Gale to tell anyone else. However, as Gale thought that Sho Jiao was going to step on a glorious peak and become the next sect master since he had survived the ancient continent, Gale bet everything on the young man. He had told him this secret. Mu Wei here and the Mu Wei in the glacier in the underworld glacial valley. Who is the real one? Who is the other one? Sho Jiao mumbled to himself, his eyes dark and inexplicable. The stone chamber. The blood vein ring flew out, glowing in a blood-red halo. It had dyed the entire room crimson. All of a sudden, it released a brutal aura. "My master's aura diffuses from that box," said the ring spirit. After the ring spirit had collected its full memory, it didn't become closer to Shi Yang. Quite the contrary, it was quite distant to him. After its memory was complete, it had a powerful consciousness and thus, it concealed a lot of things from Shi Yang. Many times when Shi Yang was in trouble, he had asked the ring spirit to explain his doubt and it didn't answer. The ring spirit seemed to be sealed as it didn't release a single beam of aura. This time, when he touched the box that Tsunami Chamber of Commerce had delivered, the dormant ring spirit talked to him. Bloodthirstis aura. Shi Yang was shaken hard. His hand holding the jade box quivered in thrill and curiosity. Bloodthirsty was the master of the Cortage of Eight and also the owner of the Bloodvein ring. 10,000 years ago, he was almost invincible in this universe. His appearance had directly restructured the Sea of Stars and changed the rule of the four great creatures taking turns to control the world. He had made the experts of those forces betray their own kind to follow him. The 8 great inheritances imparted by Bloodthirsty had discolored the cosmos. He was the main character of the modern time and the one who was worth the title of the first expert of the world. That year, it cost the lives of countless experts of the God Clan who had joined hands with many supernatural experts and demons in the entire Sea of Stars to destroy him. The rumors of that brute had been told in every strong force. It was truly a powerful force worthy of people talking about in this Sea of Stars. His name had freaked people out. Many old experts and monsters couldn't relax because of him. It had been many years but the God Clan's Elder Committee still had to have regular meetings because of this name. He was the real overlord of the Sea of Stars. Holding the jade box, Shi Yang's arm shivered. He took a deep breath to calm down and asked, "How to open it?" "I'll do that," answered the ring spirit. The bright blood light emitted from the ring and then condensed into a massive bloody hand, which had only 3 fingers. It didn't look like it was from any humanoid race but some monster. The blood hand grabbed the lid and waited for a few seconds. Crack! The lid was lifted up. Boom! The deadly brutal energy rocketed like a massive blood sea flooding everywhere. In that short moment, the thick murderous aura had created an enormous phantom of a Demogon right above the mansion. All the experts on Tsunami Star had a strong vibe in their souls. Many incipient God Realm experts became restlessly anxious. This fear was gone for years and now, it had just come back. From the far distance, they looked at Black Iron City. Their eyes were baffled and they also grimaced. Inside the mansion, Mu Wei, Wu Lai, Jiao Mu, Bai Yifeng, and Sanji were shivering. They were scared out of their wits as they were watching the blood phantom in the sky. Inside the stone chamber, Shi Yang's face reddened as if he had many mountains pressing down on his back. He couldn't stand such force as he kneeled down on one knee. Boom! 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 The ground of this chamber exploded. Because of Shi Yang kneeling down, the entire mansion had to endure an earthquake. Many buildings and pavilions collapsed. His crimson eyes gazed at the thing inside the box, his face so shocked. It was a finger, a peculiar long finger. It was as long as a whole human arm and as big as a child's arm. This finger was dark blue with many exquisite and complex, archaic patterns that were exactly the same as the patterns on the Bloodvein ring. There was a ring mark on a section of the finger, which was obviously created by wearing a ring for a long time. This dark blue finger looked as if it was molded out of iron or steel. The finger emitted a brutal, earth-shaking aura. Looking at the finger, Shi Yang felt like he was watching an unceasing current of blood that could swarm and knock his soul alter down. He couldn't even gather his thoughts to resist. The bloodlight flashed once again as the Bloodvein ring flew over and slid itself onto the finger. At that moment, the finger seemed to revive. The incredible energy was released with the auras of 8 different powers Upanishads including soul control, death, corrosion, dark, chaos, destruction, despair, and corpse chi. The ring mark on that dark blue finger was now covered by the Bloodvein ring as if it was always there and had never left. Waves of terrifying energy grumbled and became even fiercer. This kind of energy ran directly into people's souls. The experts in Black Iron City and in the entire Tsunami Star were affected. They felt like a creepy demon was watching them. Everybody was freaked out. Mu Wei, Bai Yi Feng, and Wu Lai stayed inside the mansion. They had blood oozing out from their mouths and nostrils. They paled as they had to bear an incredible pressure. Shi Yang was kneeling on one knee, one hand holding the jade box. Blood trickled from his mouth. He found that the connection between him and the ring spirit was cut off as soon as it slid on that finger. He was so terrified. Pondering for seconds, he closed the lid of the box without a bit of hesitation. An earth-shaking murderous aura flooded his head when he touched the lid. It stormed into his soul altar and attempted to take the black hole there to the lid of the box. It terrified him furthermore. Shi Yang gathered his spirit, soul, and qi, making a hand to grab the black hole and pull it back. His other hand holding the jade box released it. When he didn't contact the box directly, the energy that had invaded his soul disappeared. At that moment, the earth-shaking murderous aura above Black Iron City vanished into thin air. Wu Lai, Mu Wei, and the others weren't put under pressure anymore. With a pale face, they sat cross-legged on the ground and hurried to use the pellets to treat their soul altar. Although they grimaced, they didn't hurry to ask Shi Yang what had just happened. The stone chamber was now a ruin of rock. Shi Yang looked at the jade box on a pile of rock, his complexion changing. The ring spirit left his finger and slid itself on that dark blue finger. It had cut off the connection with him too. A series of actions happened too fast he couldn't react. Looking at the jade box, Shi Yang felt cold inwardly. He observed the jade box and kept silent for a long time. In the end, he waved his hand to put the box into his fantasy sky ring. Chapter 1240, Puzzled. Chapter 1240, Puzzled. Two people were watching the street on a tower of hundreds of meters tall at a corner of Black Iron City. Not far from them was that mansion where the earth-shaking murderous aura had just soared up. "Teacher!" Cecilia cried, her charming face pale. "What is that phantom of De Moghan?" She had just found the mansion where Sho Jiao and the others were staying, so she stood on this tower to watch with her teacher, Lena. While she was thinking to get there, the terrifying aura had shot up into the sky. It had covered the entire city and astounded people. As she stood near there without her teacher's help, her soul was going to collapse under such pressure. Then, Cecilia was standing on the high tower to watch that mansion from a distance. She was aghast. Within 100 miles around that mansion, there were bodies of hundreds of thousands of dead warriors scattered. They died in strange positions. Some were buying things while others were having fun. They remained at their positions, but their soul altars were all broken. They didn't have a bit of vitality in their bodies. The warriors under ethereal god realm died everywhere, inside and outside that mansion. "It's his aura." Lena was frightened, her face grimaced. He had fallen for so many years. "Why did we see his aura today?" "It's the master of the bloodthirsty force," asked Cecilia. "It must be him." Lena contemplated for a while and then said, "When this man swaggered around the universe, I was still very young. My realm at that time wasn't as high as yours now. But my teacher used to join that battle. She had joined hands with the God clan to attack that man. After that battle, she came back and not long afterward, her soul vanished after a period of being corroded by his power. Before she died, she told me that before that man was killed, his body had fragmented. Countless pieces of his body had disappeared into space slits. It has been so many years and the God clan hasn't given up on the mission of finding those pieces of his body. But they got nothing." Lena paused for seconds and watched the mansion down there. The aura we'd seen should be from the fragments of his body. Cecilia discolored in fright. Only a piece of his body and it could shatter the soul altars of the warriors at ethereal god realm? "It's true." Lena looked as if she was still scared. "I have never seen him before. My teacher had cooperated with the leading experts from the major star areas to fight him. During that battle, they had smashed several star areas. The shockwaves from their battle reached a far distance and killed many warriors around. A piece of his body had such terrifying power." Cecilia was aghast. "Teacher, it's just half a step and you can enter immortal realm. That man, what realm does he have at that time? How could he be so intimidating like that?" Cecilia managed to ask after a long time. Lena gave her a forced smile. My teacher was in Immortal Realm at that year. That's why she was qualified to join the operation of killing him. However, my teacher was attacked by his corroding power. After that battle, she had done many things to get rid of it. She failed. Eventually, her soul altar rotted to death. You can tell how strong he was. What realm were you at? Asked Cecilia. You shouldn't ask much. The more you know, the more pressure you will bear. It will be a detriment to your realm's advancement. Lena sighed. Wait until I can break that barrier to enter the Immortal Realm. Then, I will be able to know how strong he was. Branch office of the Chamber of Commerce in Black Iron City. Tai Dun had sweat beaded on his forehead. He looked in the direction of that mansion and talked to a man standing in front of him. Elder Spark, you could sense that aura. You don't need me to say more, right? Tai Dun put away a brocade box carefully. He looked delighted. That brocade box kept the item that Feng Ju had promised him. It could help him break through to second sky of incipient God realm. Spark was like an iceberg. He nodded and said no more. He looked at the massive mirror in the center of the secret chamber and then disappeared after a flash. Tai Dun waited for a long time before activating the mirror. He then reported, President, sir. Black Iron City is in trouble. The jade box we delivered was opened. Shi Yang got to the surface through a stone corridor. He looked really disheveled. Shuo Jiao had blood on his chest as he looked at Shi Yang with feeble eyes. He reluctantly got a hold of himself and said huskily, You got out eventually. Mu Wei, Bai Yifeng, Wu Lai, Jiao Mu, Sanji, Wu Feng, Mo Fu, and Sanji were standing there too. The juniors all looked tired and wounded. I think we should hurry to go to Black Iron City, shouted Wu Lai. Shi Yang glanced at him. When you opened the jade box, hundreds of thousands of people died in this city. I'm afraid that Tsunami Chamber of Commerce was planning to take revenge, Bai Yifeng explained. Shi Yang frowned but he said nothing. He came to Tsunami Star this time because Frederick had asked Shong Chen to do that. The bloodthirsty force had some plan to send him here. However, Shi Yang wasn't so sure if the purpose of that chief of one force of the bloodthirsty force was for him to visit this place. However, Shi Yang was shocked when he heard that hundreds of thousands of warriors had to die because he had opened the jade box. He felt so wrong. And now, the blood vein ring was worn on that finger, so he didn't dare to touch the jade box anymore. He couldn't have any method to know more secrets from the ring spirit. For the time being, he felt so puzzled about the future. Black Iron City isn't the place we discuss a big business. We're here just to wait for you. The people from Thousand Fantasy Sect and the Broken Hall are in Cold Iron City. We should go there, suggested Mu Wei, his eyes having a dim halo. Thousand Fantasy Sect? Broken Hall? Cold Iron City? Shi Yang was puzzled. Thousand Fantasy Sect and the Broken Hall are the two extremely powerful forces in this universe. In fact, the league to resist the God Clan between our star areas is led by these two forces. Anyway, the warriors of Thousand Fantasy Sect and Broken Hall were killed too early on Desolate. They couldn't contact you there. Since they didn't join the operation in Agate Star area, the God Clan didn't attack them. Before we came here, we have invited Thousand Fantasy Sect and the Broken Hall to unite with us to counter the God Clan. Mu Wei explained simply. However, they wanted to meet the person in authority of the bloodthirsty force. They wanted to discuss with you guys to see what we should do. Thousand Fantasy Sect and Broken Hall are intimidating. Besides the God Clan and the four great creatures, they are the strongest forces in the Sea of Stars. If we get their support, we can dissolve the God Clan's threat, intervened Bai Yifeng. As you created such a terrifying commotion in this Black Iron City, I'm sure we can't stay here anymore. What do you think? Shuo Jiao looked at Mu Wei, his eyes sinister. He always thought that Mu Wei was having some conspiracy and Bai Yifeng didn't sound right, either. Shuo Jiao and Mo Fu used to discuss a lot before this meeting. Shuo Jiao knew that Bai Yifeng didn't appreciate Mo Fu. He thought that Mo Fu was just a playboy and that he wasn't eligible to inherit Black Wind's legacy. However, Bai Yifeng had supported Mo Fu wholeheartedly in the Agate Star Area's operation. He had even tried to contact a strong force to help them. Mu Wei and Bai Yifeng were somehow similar. They cared about this union a lot, and they were the most active people when going to Tsunami Star for the summit meeting. There wasn't so much to say. If the meeting in Tsunami Star could be successful, it was because of Mu Wei and Bai Yifeng for their efforts in planning and contacting the Thousand Fantasy Sect and the Broken Hall. When Sho Jiao noticed that Mu Wei and Bai Yifeng had each other's back as they wanted to take Shiyang to Cold Iron City, he had a feeling that these two had already discussed with each other beforehand, so they had understood each other tacitly. They treated Shiyang with ambiguity, indeed. Sho Jiao eyed Shiyang. Shiyang was indifferent, as if he was having something in his mind whether he should follow Mu Wei and Bai Yifeng's suggestion or not. When he was still hesitant, a flaming meteor shot over. A freezing aura diffused like a thick mist. Shortly after, it chilled people's soul and frosted them. Swoosh! A shadow appeared in the mansion. It was Spark of the God Clan's Elder Committee. He shot a look at Mu Wei, Bai Yifeng, Jiao Mu, Sanji, and Wu Lai, talking with squinting eyes. "You guys should capture this kid and hand me the jade box. Spark, ensure that our battleships will leave your star areas immediately. We won't attack you anymore." His dark eyes emitted cold lights as if they could actually turn into billions of cold threads covering the entire mansion. People under his gaze felt their blood slowly stop moving in their veins and their soul altar stopped spinning. Gradually, they felt dispirited, as if they were losing power and becoming ordinary people. Shiyang experienced this much deeper than the others. As Spark was gazing at him, many cold threads appeared in his sea of consciousness. They moved and screamed ear-piercingly as if they had their own consciousness. They swaggered everywhere in his sea of consciousness like shuttles that froze his soul consciousness. A beam of power Upanishad with the consciousness of a living being was the sign of reaching immortal realm. Although Spark wasn't a real immortal realm expert, he had at least found some powerful abilities of this realm. The cold threads were still screaming and winding his sea of consciousness. Slowly, his consciousness was frozen together with his thoughts. "Your God Clan has carried out massacres in our hollow fearsome star area, and now you talk like nothing has happened. It's not that easy," Mu Wei shouted. "If you were at Immortal Realm, of course, you could do anything you want today. But too bad, you've just taken a step in there. You still need a bit more to officially enter Immortal Realm, right? I also want to see if you can act haughty in front of us," laughed Bai Yifeng. Sho Jiao became more puzzled. Under Spark's threat, Mu Wei and Bai Yifeng were the first ones who reacted, which had surprised Sho Jiao a lot. "Heavenly soul-eating GU," Mu Wei sneered, his body shaking. Countless GU insects emerged from his body like clouds. Those GU insects were so peculiar. They screeched and their twittering was ear-piercing as they were fiercely swarming towards Spark. Bai Yifeng looked focused. The sky above his head immediately had billions of lightning bolts that were grumblingly thundering in the sky. They had shaken the entire Black Iron City. Countless bolts of lightning cast a downpour on Spark like a flood current, as if they attempted to kill Spark in one strike. At the same time, Shiyang summoned his co-soul. A soul made of flames emerged in his sea of consciousness. Billions of flames like fireflies burned his sea of consciousness quickly. His frozen consciousness was restored. Chapter 1241, Meticulous Arrangement. Chapter 1241, Meticulous Arrangement. Mu Wei, the great elder of the GU God sect, shivered and countless insects flew out from his body. Bai Yifeng was drawing billions of lightning bolts from the sky. In the savage thunder, lightning directly struck Spark. Seizing the chance, Shiyang summoned his co-soul and used the flaming origin to melt down the frost in his soul. He regained his sound consciousness. "It's true that I've made half a step into the immortal realm, but this half step isn't something you could deal with," Spark shouted coldly. His eyes turned dark when the incipient extent like a picture of the world unfolded above his head. It was a world of darkness and chaos with mournful screeching and shrieking. Right after that, people saw millions of skulls emerged from his incipient extent. Those skulls belonged to creatures from different races. All of them were ash-gray without any piece of skin remained. Their empty sockets had cold, dark flames. Millions of skulls moved in the sky like the cold yin lanterns. The screeching and screaming that the skulls were making attempted to swallow the evil thoughts in people's minds. The insects flew out from Mu Wei's body, flew in clouds and shadowed the sky. However, they were swallowed by skulls and then frozen by the flames in their empty sockets before they could reach Spark. The cold yin power that Spark had cultivated was the fusion of yin qi and the extremely cold energy. It was indeed special. Although he had just made half a step into Immortal Realm, his power in this battle had surpassed Mu Wei's at third sky of incipient God Realm. The lightning bolts that Bai Yi Feng had struck out were dissolved easily. Spark's skulls piled up in the sky and created a massive ash-gray skull, which was made of millions of the small skulls. In the next moment, it opened its mouth and sucked the bolts of lightning, swallowing them all. The colossal skulls floated in the world above Spark's head. Its empty sockets with the sparkling dark flames gazed at Shi Yang. A sinister thought that frightened the soul shot out from the skull's eyes and aimed at Shi Yang's host soul. The void's 9 layers. Shi Yang discolored slightly. He urged his power Upanishad, his god power circulating like electrical lights. The void in front of him changed all of a sudden. It layered up in 9 tiers. 9 blocks of space piled up and created a tenacious defense. This secret spatial ability of the space power Upanishad came from Bello. Using the god power to guide and pile the spatial blocks up to 9 layers, he could have prevented all kind of visible and invisible attacks. The evil thought from the skull above Spark's head thrusted into the spatial defense and created a sound like a sharp spear cutting the fabric tent. The 9 layers of the void twisted and crushed like a sword cutting through white brocade sheets. The tearing sounds emerged when the void layers were cut through. Ouch! Spark hissed. He was astounded. He then pointed at his glabella. A cold yin river flowed out of his incipient extent. This river was refined from the moon sky river deep inside the universe. It had the yin aura of the moon, which was suitable for his state of mind and power Upanishad, providing him with endless magical powers. The river then poured on the layers of the void. The cold aura could pierce through that tremendous defense quickly. It attempted to cover Shi Yang instantly. Until this moment, Mu Wei and Bai Yi Feng shot the next attacks and shouted, "Join us to counter him." Hearing them shouting, Wu Lai, Jiao Mu, and Sanji, the 3 experts at second sky of ethereal god realm couldn't think much but attack instinctively. Wu Lai opened his mouth and spurted out a fireball. The core of his fireball was a dry sun, which was burning because of his power Upanishad and god power. The solar nucleus of the fireball flared up with light waves and attacked Spark. The dry sun was also a sun. While its nucleus was spinning inside, it released heat waves, which then wore out the cold yin power of the massive skull in Spark's incipient extent. Jiao Mu had wooden textiles on his body. A world-towering ancient tree flew out of his incipient extent with the power of the endless forest. Its branches and leaves became vines that wound around the skull in the void. Sanji cultivated earth power Upanishad. A 100 meters tall earth puppet arose from the ground of the mansion, which looked pretty similar to Sanji. Amazingly, it had life energy fluctuating from its body. The earth puppet roared then stormed toward Spark's body. Mu Wei, Bai Yi Feng, Wu Lai, Jiao Mu, and Sanji were at incipient god realm. Mu Wei and Bai Yi Feng were at third sky of incipient god realm and the other 3 were at second sky of incipient god realm. The 5 of them had joined hands to attack Spark and rose earth-shaking tremors that scared all the warriors staying in Black Iron City. Spark had just made half a step into the immortal realm, so he wasn't really an immortal realm expert, even though his soul thought so. However, with the cooperation of the other 5 experts, Spark stood still. The millions of skulls and moon sky river of his had dissolved their attacks. He still didn't look dispirited and he still had the energy to mock others. The true meaning of the immortal realm is the origin of time power Upanishad. Once you touch the threshold, you can return to the origin of your power Upanishad. The marvelous abilities of this realm aren't something you can imagine. He sneered, but he hadn't attacked Shi Yang yet. The cold Yin River was like a grey shadow emitting cold lights in his incipient extent. The lights then turned into yin symbols that made them chilled to the bones and had the aura of living things. Divine power Upanishad. Lena looked amazed at the tower not far from the battle. She nodded and then said, Spark is about to reach immortal realm. His incipient extent can create the life magnetic field, which only immortal realm experts can do. He now just needs a chance to transform his soul. Cecilia frowned and looked at Shi Yang, who was temporarily safe because Spark had changed his target. She said worriedly, Teacher, how are you compared to Spark? We're at the same level, Lena answered casually. I can't beat him up, but he can't defeat me, either. Our competence is not very different. If Shi Yang meets fatal dangers later, teacher, you must help him. I think Shi Yang could know that man's whereabouts. Cecilia tried to convince her teacher. Lena didn't react, her eyes cold and faint. If the bloodthirsty force let him visit Black Iron City and stir up the wind here, I'm sure that they have some meticulous arrangement. I don't think that there's a member of their force in this city. Don't worry. His bloodthirst is successor, he won't be killed easily. Just wait and watch. I hope so, Cecilia said bitterly. Spark used his own power to fight with 5 ethereal god realm experts, and he didn't fall into the lower hand. At the moment, he didn't aim at Shi Yang but control the millions of skulls in his incipient extent and the Yin River. While fighting, he continuously looked in a specific direction as if he was waiting for something. Shi Yang floated in the void, and behind him were so many space slits weaving with each other. The outer space streamers and strong guts shot out of the cracks continuously. Spark had a profound and unpredictable realm. He had understood the meaning of the immortal realm. If Mu Wei, Bai Yifeng, and the others didn't join hands to protect him, Shi Yang could have never escaped. Shi Yang had opened the space cracks behind him and let them stand by. In case the situation didn't turn well, he was going to have to run away immediately. At the gate of Black Iron City, Audrey had just gotten into the city. She was shocked, looking at the battle not far from her. It's strange that some experts are fighting in Black Iron City. Tsunami Star didn't forbid warriors from fighting individually, only for legions or fleets. Thus, the God Clan's fleet couldn't come here to have a bloody star war. However, the Tsunami Star couldn't interfere too much in individual fights as long as they didn't destroy the city structure or affect the planet. Anyway, the battle over there had shaken the entire city. Those warriors didn't care about Tsunami Chamber of Commerce's regulations. This surprised Audrey a lot. That's Elder Spark of the God Clan, the old Imperial Dark expert standing behind her snorted. He said, It has been many years and I haven't seen him. I didn't expect that he would still be alive and healthy. Let's go there and check him out. The old man and Audrey turned into a dark soul light and flashed to travel through thousands of miles in just a blink. They disregarded the Tsunami Chamber of Commerce's regulation too. At the same time, another brilliant light was shooting towards the mansion. It was Haig, surprisingly. Dash! Swoosh! The brilliant light shot over and a man wearing the beautiful armor of the God Clan appeared in the mansion. This man had wise and deep eyes. Haig! Shi Yang hissed. Why you are late? Spark asked impatiently and frowned. Fengju said that this kid belongs to you. I hope you can seize this good chance. Just kill him. You don't need to care about others. I'll take care of them for you. Tsunami Chamber of Commerce doesn't dare to interfere with our God Clan's business, anyway. Thank you, Elder. Haig bowed to him. Spark waved his hand. Do it. Haig looked at Shi Yang, his eyes bright with an unrestrained, excited light. You've reached incipient God realm. Good. Only defeating you when we have the equivalent competence wouldn't make me feel bad. When we fought each other on Desolate, I had to press my realm to stay in ethereal God realm. Today, I don't need to restrain myself for worry that Desolate would aim at me if my realm could break through. I want to see how long you can endure my power today. Haig was so enthusiastic. From the day he was confined, he had longed for this battle. He wanted to use Shi Yang's blood to wash his failure on the ancient continent. Dash! It's Haig. Turns out Spark was waiting for him. Lena screamed in surprise. She closed her eyes to sense for a while. Immediately, she discolored in fright. Haig's very powerful. The aura on his body is even stronger than Wu Lai's team. If Shi Yang has to fight with Haig only, Shi Yang will be the winner. Cecilia pouted her lips. As he could surprise Haig on the ancient continent, he could still do it again here. Haig's the future leader that the God clan has spent efforts to nurture. His power Upanishad is magical. He's placid and smart. It's true that he could have reached the incipient God realm earlier. He had to press down his realm just to take the chance to go to the ancient continent. Today, he doesn't have such pressure. Haig isn't the Haig at that time. He doesn't have a knot in his heart anymore. Lena said with a solemn face, Shi Yang couldn't be his opponent in this battle. No. He will win, Cecilia said stubbornly. Lena was amazed. She smiled, shaking her head. She didn't comment more. A soul light emerged on the opposite tower. Audrey and Gillette of the Imperial Dark Tribe appeared, watching the battle out there. Chapter 1242, Outstanding Heroes Stir Up. Chapter 1242, Outstanding Heroes Stir Up. There were hundreds of thousands of corpses scattered around the mansion in different positions. The ones who were still alive were at least at ethereal god realm. Around the mansion were many stone towers where people could observe the commotions inside the mansion. Lena and Cecilia stood on a tower while Audrey and Gillette, the Imperial Dark experts, were standing on the opposite tower. Besides these two stone towers, there were many other towers with vague shadows standing. They were all watching Haig of the God Clan and Shi Yang, the representative of the bloodthirsty force. After they had arrived at the stone tower, Gillette's brows twitched. The dim souls like shadows detached from his god body. He furrowed his brows, his face awkward. Interesting. What? Asked Audrey, her voice cold and clear. Did you notice the surroundings? Gillette blinked. How many stone towers are there in this mansion? Audrey's line of sight raked through the place. 13 towers. Some of them look new. Each of the stone towers stood firm and scattered around the mansion where Shi Yang, Mu Wei, and the others stayed. Those towers remained a safe distance from the battle. Some of them had marks of newly built buildings. Those stone towers looked shabby as if they were abandoned for a long time. It was really strange in this city where every square meter was as expensive as gold. 13 stone towers and each of them has experts hiding. They belong to different forces. Gillette looked surprised. Then, he said, now I understand why your mother wanted me to escort you. Audrey was astounded. The hotshots of the Thousand Fantasy sect stay there. He pointed at another tower. The Broken Hall's experts stay there. He looked at the opposite tower and paused for a while. Oh, Lena is standing opposite to us. Lena of the Heaven River Temple? Audrey was astounded. She then lowered her voice. Cecilia, the one I met on the ancient continent, should be her disciple. What made Lena come here personally? The Thousand Fantasy sect, the Broken Hall, and the Heaven River Temple are forces that rank right behind the God Clan and our Imperial Dark Tribe. Of course, they have a purpose of gathering here today. Gillette paused and then continued, the experts of the other forces stay in the other stone tower. I think they had some intelligence so they all came and hid in those towers. You mean that someone has arranged all of this? Audrey suddenly got it. Gillette nodded. Yeah, meticulous arrangement. And I think your mother knows who is behind all of this. We're here, right? What does the person who has arranged this want to do? Audrey was suspicious. She frowned and looked at the ground where Shi Yang and Haig were standing. A flash of recognition crossed her mind. She got something. Is it true that those forces want to use the result of the battle between Shi Yang and Haig to choose a side? I think so. Gillette gave a slight nod, his face strangely stern. 10,000 years ago, the God Clan had united the forces everywhere to resist against the bloodthirsty force. At that time, the Thousand Fantasy sect, the Broken Hall, and the Heaven River Temple had joined hands with the God Clan and helped them destroy the bloodthirsty force. The forces of the Thousand Fantasy sect, the Broken Hall, and the Heavenly River Temple had contributed the most efforts. Without them, the God clan wouldn't have had the victory in the end. Today, these forces gather again in those stone towers. Gillette said in a low-pitched voice, Haig is the new leader of the God clan and Shi Yang is the bloodthirsty successor. These two represent the God clan and the bloodthirsty force. I wonder if the forces observing this battle would choose their side after they know the result and compare the young men's competences. Audrey sounded surprised. Your mother had sent you and me here. She may consider this too. Haig got the inheritance of his ancestral star and Shi Yang also got the inheritance of the ancient continent. If nothing unexpected happens, they will be the leaders of these two forces respectively. After this battle, their roles in their forces would become more crucial. The other forces will possibly assess the fighting competence of these two young men. This assessment will affect their choice when they choose a side to support, said Gillette. Audrey's beautiful eyes were glum and dim as she mumbled. Why is our tribe ineligible to join this? Gillette forced a smile and sighed. If you could take the Genesis fruit on Desolate, you would have been one of the warriors in this battle, he thought. Too bad. Spark stopped fighting like a glacier that stopped flowing. He even stepped back and said, We're not the main characters of this battle. He looked at Mu Wei and Bai Yi Feng. Mu Wei and Bai Yi Feng looked confused. A vague shadow flashed in their eyes. Mu Wei and Bai Yi Feng looked baffled for a while and then nodded. This battle is the competition between the God clan and the bloodthirsty force. We just need to watch it. Mu Wei told Jiao Mu, Sanji, and Wu Lai. As Spark doesn't participate in this, we should do the same. What do you think? Said Bai Yi Feng. Jiao Mu, Sanji, and Wu Lai were bewildered. They were inexplicably confused. They didn't know that someone was behind this scene to encourage the battle between Shi Yang and Haig. Mu Wei and Bai Yi Feng were just the ones bearing this task. Jiao Mu, Sanji, and Wu Lai didn't know that this battle would determine the trend of the major forces in the near future, either. Choosing the God clan or the bloodthirsty force was a consequence of this battle. They were very confused about Mu Wei, Bai Yi Feng, and Spark as they stopped fighting now. Seeing Spark just stand there and cross his arms in front of his chest to watch, they also decided to step aside and watch the battle. These three were just sacrificing pawns without knowing any conspiracy. Even Mu Wei and Bai Yi Feng were puzzled from time to time when the vague shadow flashed in their eyes. It seemed to be able to control them in that blink of an eye and distort their thoughts. Afterward, Spark glanced at the stone towers around. Flames sparked in his eyes when he snorted. Gillette grinned and released a wisp of soul consciousness to the void between him and Spark, which carried a fierce, sinister energy. Boom! Thunder reverberated in the sky. People with high realms had their soul altars quiver. The mysterious shadows standing inside the stone towers looked at Gillette and Spark. One of the old freaks of the Imperial Dark Tribe is here. Lena was solemn. She frowned and looked at the tower in front of them and then the ground of the mansion. When she observed Haig and Shi Yang, her eyes changed inexplicably. A heavy aura filled the mansion. Spark, Mu Wei, and the others had backed off to the other corners of the place. Shuo Jiao, Wu Feng, and the other juniors were forced to stay away. They left the main ground for Shi Yang and Haig. This arranged battle had attracted a discreet audience that hid inside the stone buildings around. They had concealed their auras and commotion. They were here to seriously consider and bet for their future. This battle was going to help them make up their minds, which would break the current balance. The result of this battle would shake the entire cosmos. After that, the real strong forces could finally have their opinions. Haig, why are you here? Shi Yang looked colder. When his soul consciousness checked around, he found many terrifyingly strong auras from the stone towers around. The confuse that had stayed in his mind for a long time was revealed after he found those auras. He didn't understand why the chief of one force of the bloodthirsty force had requested Shang Chen to take him here. He knew something strange hidden here. And now, he got it. He immediately understood. This battle had been arranged beforehand. It was inevitable. He and Haig were the representatives of the two forces' future. They were the criteria for the other forces to compare and make their bet. I've always thought that the God Clan's Elder Committee doesn't have keen eyes, and even the God Clan's ancestral star has some problem. Shi Yang grinned as many secret eyes were studying him. Because as far as I've concerned, you, Haig, aren't eligible to be the future leader of the God Clan. I thought Harson was more qualified. If your ancestral planet and the Elder Committee weren't blind, why would they choose you instead of Harson? Tell me. Which strength do you have to be a better choice than Harson? Pausing for seconds, he laughed fiendishly and talked oddly. If Harson were standing in front of me now, I would be gingerly fighting Wim. And I would be even more anxious. But you, Shi Yang shook his head smilingly and strangely. Everybody could hear his ridiculing. The shadows hiding in the towers felt awkward. This kid has a sharp tongue, indeed. However, Haig had just kept silent right from the start. He didn't look reluctant at all. He kept his placid eyes, listening to Shi Yang's harsh words. My mind doesn't have a leak. All of your harsh words will just be in vain. Haig sounded calm and natural. Harson is dead and I am here. It proves I'm stronger than him. When Harson was at his best condition, the Charterist didn't dare to send him to challenge me. It's the clearest evidence that I'm much stronger than him. A holy light curtain arose above Haig's head. The light incipient extent that Haig had created was beautifully dazzling with the soul-purifying divine light shining. 5 stars slowly emerged from his world that carried the deepest powers of the 5 elements including metal, wood, water, fire, and earth. The brilliant divine lights floated between the 5 stars and made them 5 gorgeous massive diamonds. The energy emitted from them was torrential and endless. The 5 orbs slowly spun and carried the principles of nature like a formation that never ceased. They took turns to flash the power of the 5 elements. Many hermits with the profound realm could learn something new by watching the changing power of the 5 elements. Using the power of 5 elements to create the stars and using the divine light to chain them up. Perfect incipient extent and power Upanishad. This lad Haig is mighty. Gillette was so surprised. This man is really outstanding. The God Clan does have keen eyes as they've chosen him as the future leader, Lena nodded. The hiding experts of the other forces were also startled when they observed Haig's performance. It was amazing to them, indeed. Chapter 1243, Fusing Power Upanishad. Chapter 1243, Fusing Power Upanishads. The 5 stars of metal, wood, water, fire, and earth were spinning above Haig's head and releasing immense energy fluctuations. Haig's eyes became focused. An extremely pure light radiated from his world like a thick sprinkle falling on the 5 stars and increasing their powers. Then, they arranged in a pentagonal formation and grumblingly snatched Shi Yang. Refine. Haig shouted. Boom. The 5 stars emitted gold, cyan, white, red, and yellow lights respectively. A flame expanded from the surface of the 5 stars, which was one of the Origin's heaven flames. Also, it combined the heaven flame with terrifying power. It could refine everything. The experts of many forces hiding in the 13 stone towers discolored in shock. It was the form of the high-fused heaven flame. After having fused with the Origin, Haig's attainment of heaven flames had greatly surpassed the other 3. Audrey was astounded as she screamed, his compatibility with the heaven flame is much deeper than all of us. Gillette nodded with a dark face. If Shi Yang doesn't have any special tricks, I'm not on his side in this match. Many people had the same thought as his. The hiding experts of the Thousand Fantasy Sect, the Broken Hall, and the Heaven River Temple, and even Spark and Mu Wei looked amazed. He was worthy of the title of the best prodigy in the past 1,000 years of the God Clan's history. The power that Haig was showing now wasn't less than his great precursors that year. When that precursor had reached incipient God realm, his understanding of the flaming origin wasn't as profound as Haig's. No wonder why the God Clan's elders had wholeheartedly nurtured Haig and given him the privilege to hold the supreme position of the God Clan in the future. The energy that could burn down everything was released from 5 stars in the sky that covered Shi Yang entirely. At this moment, Shi Yang's host soul was sending out vibes as if it wanted to move alongside the 5 element stars, forcefully self-destructing. Shi Yang believed what Haig had told him. That year when they were on Desolate, Haig had tried to subdue his realm. He could break to incipient god realm, but he had to strenuously press it down, which gave a crack in his mind and prevented him from showing his mighty competence. He finally knew why God Clan had considered Haig instead of Harson as their future leader. Haig did have innate talents. On his path of cultivating power Upanishad, he had soon surpassed Harson to enter the state of mind of an incipient god realm expert. Both of his energy and Upanishad was perfect. And today, as he had reached incipient god realm, his state of mind was complete. Different from the experts who had just entered the incipient god realm, he didn't look reluctant or his power unstable. He was like an experienced expert who had been in this realm for a long time. The way he urged and used his supernatural abilities was natural like flowing water in the absolutely well cooperation with his soul. Refine, hissed Haig. A fiery fire was burning high outside the 5-element stars. They suddenly pressed down like 5 holy mountains that could break even space. Explosions reverberated as the void shattered. An earth-shaking momentum. Shi Yang took a deep breath, his eyes crimson. A magical intent domain was released. Death power Upanishad. Then, deep inside the clouds above Black Iron City emitted a cold, deadly aura. The hundreds of thousands of dead warriors whose soul altars had been erased in just a blink now had their dead chi disappear rapidly as if a hand was drawing them. The grey threads of dead chi are all up to dark clouds. Millions of threads with abundant energy from the dead with their fixation in this world were drawn by Shi Yang's power Upanishad. Countless threads condensed in the void and made a massive hand. It was like the wrath of angels when people heard pitiful screeching and crying from that hand. Change! Shi Yang shouted suddenly. The massive hand with the power of death changed. The thick deadly aura abruptly vanished into thin air as if some magical principle had changed them. Within seconds, the gigantic hand changed dramatically. It was now a blood-dripping hand with an immense vitality that was like the robust energy of a top expert. It was the life energy. This hand had endless vitality while the exquisite drawings in its palm twisted and moved into a sign of life. The massive hand pressed down, grabbed the metal star, and pulled it. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The metal star that Haig's incipient extent had nurtured was hurled to the deep area in the sky. It flashed and then disappeared from people's sights. The waves of vitality from the giant hand changed magically once again. Countless starlight dots were moving along the lines of the palm of the hand. The signs of life now blended with the principles of the stars in the sky. The lines in the palm moved by the trajectories of the stars in the galaxy. The changes between life and death. Using the acme of death to generate new life and death energy, it's the truth that fusion of death and life power Upanishad should happen. Perfect power Upanishad fusion. Momentarily, people hear the muffled surprised screams from the stone towers. When the experts from major forces looked at Shi Yang now, they had fear in their eyes. No. When the life and death power Upanishad changed, it had the principles from the stars. It's a new form of power fusion. It's unbelievable that this young man could reach such heights. As he can use his powers to such exquisite level, his innate talents and endowment aren't worse than Haig. No wonder his bloodthirst is successor. This battle is so exciting. The warriors hiding in the stone tower quietly discussed. Their lines of sight shot through countless beams of light and the flood currents of energy to reach Shi Yang. Under their gazes, Shi Yang was sitting cross-legged on the stone ground of the mansion and looking at the sky with his crimson eyes. Haig was floating in the sky, the 4 stars above his head spinning unceasingly. The heaven flame slowly moved like a surging sea. It covered the massive hand and attempted to burn it. After that attack, the energy fluctuation of the massive hand was reduced massively as if it was burned down. Shi Yang sat still. He snorted and then shouted again. Drain. Sizzle. 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 The space behind Shi Yang's nape looked as if thousands of lightsabers had just cut it. Space cracks emerged. The brutal energy diffused from those space cracks together with the cold and desolate auras of the dead souls. Those dead auras were dragged here from a far, far away place as if death had just summoned them all of a sudden. The entire sky was dark and quiet. Even the light from the 9 suns couldn't pierce through the thick, grey air mass of death. The deadly air came from space cracks that streamed onto the palm of the massive hand in the sky. The hand then became boosted with more vitality. When the gigantic took in grey rivers of deadly energy, the lines in the palm had become the primal original seal of life that could create lives. Crack. The massive hand disappeared quickly and turned into 4 fists at the same size. Those fists were tight with wild blood chi and surging vitality. The 4 fists aimed at their targets and walloped the 4 stars in Haig's incipient extent. The 4 stars sent out billions of sparks and shot everywhere. They fell to each corner of Black Iron City. Many warriors couldn't dodge the sparks. They were crushed quickly. Not good. These two are mad. Do they really want to destroy Black Iron City? Defend. Seal. Tai Dun was floating in the sky above Chamber of Commerce's center in Black Iron City. A small city model suddenly appeared above his head. That city was pitch black and it was the miniature of Black Iron City. Tai Dun's face was so cold. Both of his hands were moving and making hand seals to the Black Iron City model. As it was receiving the seals from Tai Dun, Black Iron City was awakened like a massive beast. Grumbling noises echoed from the corners of the city. Countless symbols and magical drawings in the city were activated. A powerful barrier was created and it shielded the entire Black Iron City. When the shock waves from Shiyang and Haig's battle fell from the sky, a barrier of black clouds stopped them and black lightning bolts smashed them. No shockwave could affect the citizens of Black Iron City. After he had set up the defense, Tai Dun paled as he was so tired. He gritted his teeth, his face dark. He then stormed indignantly towards the place where Shiyang and Haig were fighting. It had accelerated beyond his estimation. As the real city master of the Black Iron City, he must ensure the safety of this city. He would never let the battle between Shiyang and Haig affect the city and its citizens. It was the responsibility of a manager of the Chamber of Commerce. He knew if something happened to the city, the president wouldn't show mercy. He would demobilize him from all of his roles and power. At that time, Tai Dun couldn't even survive in any corner of this universe. Boom, 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 boom. When the 4 massive fists hit the stars, Shiyang and Haig were both shaken hard. However, their eyes were firm and resolute as they all believed that they could get the utmost victory. Change the world. Haig lifted up his head to release a seal, which then had a magical suction force. Metal Star that was flung out of Tsunami Star was driven back from outer space. Haig looked at the star and hissed as blood trickled down the corners of his mouth. Metal Star had suddenly been given endless energy. Also, the ancestral star of the god clan in the faraway ancient god continent was shaken thrice. Mountains collapsed and rivers dried up as if some magical power had been taken from them. Metal Star became a shooting meteor that radiated dazzling white light, which was even brighter than the sunlight from the 9 suns above Tsunami Star. It carried the power that could even kill warriors at third sky of incipient god realm. Just like a lightning bolt, it struck Shiyang directly. The meteor accelerated. The energy accumulating in the meteor was increasing massively and continuously as if it could thrust through both Black Iron City and Tsunami Star. Many experts hiding in the stone tower could feel the terrifying energy from the meteor when it was still flying far from them. They were all aghast. They finally knew that although the warriors with the origin had only incipient god realm, their real competences could still shake the entire sky. Even the experts who had lived so many years as they didn't have the confidence to resist that kind of energy. They all looked at Shiyang and waited to see how he would counter. Haig had taken the energy of the ancient continent to boost this attack. This was his real murderous strike. Chapter 1244, Devouring. Chapter 1244, Devouring. Each warrior fused with the origin could have a coexistence relationship with the respect ancient continent. When their compatibility with the flaming origin reached a specific level, they could draw the energy of the ancient continent. Every time they drew the energy of the ancient continent, their competence was significantly boosted, which was beyond their real realm. However, when the energy of the ancient continent was drawn, the result directly showed on the continent. Mountains exploded and collapsed, and rivers and oceans dried up. The speed of energy draining in this continent became faster. It happened like that on ancient God continent right now. The God clan's ancestral land in ancient God continent had collapsed. Mountains and withered plants were a part of the border of the continent. The earth and heaven energy there was taken away. Due to the magical power of the Genesis fruit, the ancient God continent's earth and heaven energy had reached the utmost level in the recent 10,000 years. It had boosted all members of the God clan and made them the overlords of the universe. This world had rules. When the God clan was at their peak of power, it was the time that the earth and heaven energy in the ancient continent was thickest. After that, it was the time of declining, just like what happened to Grace Mainland, the God-blessed mainland, and the ancient demon continent. Every time Desolate opened, it was the time that the ancient continents renewed their energy cycle. Currently, the energy of the ancient God continent was increasing gradually. It could begin to gather the energy remnant in outer space once again. However, it was impossible for the ancient God continent to reach its peak of thick energy one more time. That was because Haig didn't get the Genesis fruit this time. Today, as Haig had taken the energy of his ancient continent, it affected his ancestral planet directly, which was the collapse by the edge of the continent. Anyway, the energy he had drawn had caught people's attention. With the price of mountains collapsing, rivers drying up, and forests withering, Haig's power had shocked the powerful old freaks everywhere. His meteor now had a long bright tail of billions of meters. Filling with Haig's energy, the warriors below Immortal Realm were going to be wounded severely or even killed by this attack. The warriors fused with the origin had such power when they took the energy from the continent. In the dark, many people were watching Shiyang. They wanted to see if he would choose to draw the energy of Grace Mainland too. It would shatter the world of many people living in Grace Mainland. Things would collapse like it was happening on ancient God continent. He's not able to draw the energy from the origin. Audrey sighed inside a stone tower. Finally, she knew where Haig had his confidence. It turned out that Haig had intended to use the energy of the ancient continent right from the start to fight this battle. Among the group of 4 warriors who had fused with the origin of the ancient continents, only Haig could do this since his compatibility with the flaming origin was really profound. Shiyang couldn't take the energy from the origin. With this disadvantage, it was going to be very difficult for him to defeat Haig. Shiyang is going to lose this match. Although he has reached incipient God realm, his fusion with the flaming origin isn't much. He can't use the power of the origin. He's going to lose eventually. Haig is the miracle of the God clan. After 10,000 years of accumulation, the foundation of the God clan has surpassed the bloodthirsty force. Lena knitted her brows. She seemed to have made up her mind. Many people had the same thought as hers. This battle was related to the God clan and the bloodthirsty force. It could also affect the structure of this universe for the next 10,000 years. It was arranged so those experts would have their final decisions. The bloodthirsty force used to be unrivaled. To counter the bloodthirsty force that year, the God clan had joined hands with their forces to gain the final triumph. At that time, the God clan couldn't resist against the bloodthirsty force if they fought alone. After 10,000 years of accumulation and subduing the bloodthirsty force, and making this monster small and vulnerable, the weak God clan had turned into a new beast. The God clan today wasn't the fragile clan that year, and the bloodthirsty force today wasn't the invincible force of the past. Seeing Haig take in the power of the origin of the ancient continent, many people hiding in the stone towers made their decision. They were reluctant and emotional because they thought that the current structure of the world couldn't be changed easily. I'm going to destroy your soul to take Genesis fruit back. This world will still be the world of our God clan. All of a sudden, Haig shouted. At this moment, he looked so energized. His entire body was dazzling like a god rising from Earth to rule the galaxy for 10,000 years. The God clan will be destroyed. It's the rule of nature. You're just a poor witness. Shiyang's eyes became placid. The incipient extent he hadn't released was now emerging clearly in the sky above his head. At that short glimpse, a new galaxy appeared in the void. Shi Yang's incipient extent had many stars with endless space, life and death. It looked actually like a small universe. His galaxy had beautiful suns and cold moons. It also had miniatures of life stars, dead stars, and even mineral stars. It had everything that the cosmos should have. At this moment, it seemed like Shi Yang had just created a whole new world, a world that was pretty similar to this world. At the same time, 720 acupuncture points in his body had created a connection to that world instantly. Each of his acupuncture points was a strange world where he had absorbed a large amount of essence qi from the dead. It then generated endless negative emotions and massive vortexes. The 720 acupuncture points in his body were like 720 new worlds. The negative energy in those worlds was drawn out and poured into Shi Yang's incipient extent. Inside his brilliant, galaxy-like incipient extent, a massive black hole suddenly appeared. It looked like a dark, bottomless mouth that could directly fly out of the incipient extent and swallow the meteor that was falling from the sky. No one could understand how it could do that. That meteor was Haig's power taken from the origin of ancient god continent. It could kill all the warriors below immortal realm. At this moment, the black hole had swallowed the entire meteor. That meteor flashed and then disappeared. The black hole slightly twisted, turned into wisps of smoke before vanishing. Also, Shi Yang's brilliant incipient extent now had a new magnificent star. The meteor that the black hole had just devoured was Haig's metal star, which was generated from his incipient extent. It seemed to become a star in Shi Yang's incipient extent. The black hole flew out of Shi Yang's incipient extent and swallowed the meteor before returning to his soul altar. Then, Shi Yang's incipient extent now had a new metal star. This was so absurd. It's Bloodthirst's power Upanishad. Devouring power Upanishad. It's the most dangerous power Upanishad in this world. Unbelievable. He can use it. It can swallow even things from others' incipient extent. It's the exclusive power Upanishad of that man. Instantly, in each corner and each tower of the mansion, the terrifying auras emitted. The experts of the Thousand Fantasy Sect, the Broken Hall, the Heaven River Temple, and the Imperial Dark Tribe held their breaths while beholding Shi Yang's incipient extent and metal star that used to belong to Haig. They thought that they were watching Bloodthirsty. 10,000 years ago, that man's incipient extent was a chaotic, black hole. It was the most extreme and evil thing in this world that could swallow the soul altar and everything generated in the incipient extent. Everything seemed to repeat in front of their eyes now. Everybody was filled with fear. And now, Haig became so tired. He seemed to age quickly, his hair turning white. "Withdraw your power," Spark shouted ear-piercingly. He touched the sky and Haig's 4 stars returned to Haig's incipient extent at once. His incipient extent returned to his soul altar. Spark gazed at Shi Yang and roared. A cold yin river emerged in his incipient extent with the power of the immortal realm expert. It also had Spark's essence qi as if it had its own consciousness. The river plunged down and aimed at Shi Yang. "I do want to see if you have mastered Bloodthirst's power Upanishad or not. I'm convinced that if you can swallow all things in my incipient extent." The cold yin river roared and grumblingly poured on Shi Yang's incipient extent. The willpower of the immortal realm could connect to the world directly and release the earth-shaking energy. Bully. What a bully. Using the power of the immortal realm to counter Shi Yang. Well, I think the God clan became angry out of shame. Despicable. Many people screamed, but they didn't want to help Shi Yang. Lena held Cecilia, who was so worried as if she had a flame in her heart. Of course, Shi Yang's devouring power Upanishad now can't swallow all things in the incipient extent of the immortal realm warrior. He's not Spark's opponent, either. The gap between their realms is really vast. But if the bloodthirsty force has sent him here, they would have arranged something else. It's time for the bloodthirsty force's experts to crane their necks out, Gillette snorted. The cold yin river swarmed over with the power of the immortal realm. Shi Yang's sea of consciousness was fixed and his incipient extent was about to shatter. Shi Yang's mental world exploded as he screamed. There wasn't as much energy from Spark's attack as in Haig's, but it was accompanied by the seal of power Upanishad and the will of the immortal realm, which were much more terrifying than Haig at first sky of incipient god realm. Shi Yang could resist Haig, but he couldn't even have the thought of fighting back under Spark's immortal will. It was the gap between their realms. Boom. 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 Right at this moment, the corpses standing in strange poses out of the mansion suddenly flew up to the sky like the bolts of lightning. Hundreds of thousands of corpses gathered in the air. Shortly after, those hundreds of thousands of corpses had turned into a giant corpse that was even bigger than the tower. It looked like a corpse of a giant that could touch the sky. A wisp of soul consciousness from outer space reached that corpse. Immediately, it gave the corpse life. Just like the ancestor of the corpse clan, it released a thick corpse chi that was then turned into a white bone saber. It attacked Spark's cold yin river. PFFF. The cold yin river was slashed before it shattered. It became many smaller streams and it returned to Spark's incipient extent. Spark paled in just a blink of an eye. He faced the sky and cried, "Frederick." After shouting, Spark rose his hand to grab Haig. His dark eyes raked through the experts hiding in the stone towers. He tried to press down the corpse chi in his chest, but he didn't dare to linger. Shortly after, he turned into a meteor and shot out to outer space. The massive corpse stood emotionlessly as if it was still watching Spark. It didn't move. The chief of the corpse chi, Frederick protects him discreetly. No wonder why those corpses appeared. They are for Frederick to come. It's true that the bloodthirsty force had things arranged. Many people hissed on the stone towers. Chapter 1245, Frederick. Chapter 1245, Frederick. Shi Yang still sat cross-legged on the ground, his face indifferent. He was exhausted. The energy he had accumulated for years in his acupuncture points had been used to create the black hole in his incipient extent to swallow metal star that Haig had created. Because he had spent so much energy, his spirit and body couldn't bear it anymore. However, his incipient extent now had the sharp metal power from the 5 elements. It wasn't a power Upanishad in his soul altar. It just existed in his incipient extent, making it change and approach perfection. Shi Yang was still immersed and shocked. At the critical moment, he had used the devouring power Upanishad to counter the enemy. He had tried and took risks. It worked unexpectedly. His compatibility with the origin wasn't as profound as Haig. He couldn't urge the ancient continent's origin at ease. Thus, when facing Haig's lethal attack, he had squeezed his brain and decided to use Bloodthirster's power Upanishad. This power Upanishad was really magical and Shi Yang hadn't figured out its mysteries yet. When he tried today, its power was so marvelous. The black hole could swallow metal star from Haig's incipient extent and put it in Shi Yang's incipient extent. It was perfect in his incipient extent as if it was born there. Shi Yang suddenly recognized one thing. If his power Upanishad could swallow things from the other's incipient extent, should he be able to collect unique power Upanishads like metal, wood, water, fire, earth, sound, light, gravity, illusion, and more? Could he put them in his incipient extent? Shi Yang's incipient extent was like a small world with space, brilliant stars, death and life. And if he could make it have the 5 elements, sound, light, gravity, illusions, and many other things, would it gradually be like the real world out there? Was it true that his incipient extent would become perfect like the real universe? Shi Yang contemplated as he sat still to comprehend the flash of recognition that had just emerged in his head. The massive corpse created by hundreds of thousands of corpse stood by the mansion and towered the sky. The corpse chi filled the air and made the entire Black Iron City an ancient battlefield with corpses scattered everywhere. Now, the experts of the major forces hiding in the 13 stone towers finally showed themselves. They all wore complicated complexions and looked at that massive corpse. Frederick. Someone was screaming from afar. He turned into a beam of light and zoomed over immediately. You're not allowed to act rashly in this Black Iron City. Tai Dun was the branch manager of Tsunami Chamber of Commerce in Black Iron City. He hurried to the scene and shouted, his face dark and sinister. Black Iron City is a city of Tsunami Chamber of Commerce. Anyone who messes with the order of the city has already challenged our Tsunami Chamber of Commerce. Tai Dun bellowed and looked at the crowd. Suddenly, his eyes changed as he was shocked to see the massive corpse created by hundreds of thousands of corpses. That giant corpse didn't have facial features. It had only a skull, which was the combination of dozens of thousands of corpses. Then, the skull turned to Tai Dun. A corpse chi extended and tied Tai Dun instantly. Frederick. You're the chief of Corpse Chi Force, Frederick. Tai Dun discolored in fright as if he was encountering the terrifying demon. He shouted, what do you want? I'm a staff of Tsunami Chamber of Commerce. Even you're a chief of the bloodthirsty force. You should follow the rules. I can smell Feng Ju's smell on your body. The terrifying soul consciousness swept through Black Iron City like a tornado and came from that massive corpse. It turned into an air current and crossed a long distance to reach a mysterious area on Tsunami Star. A quiet aura diffused from that mysterious area to reply to Frederick's soul consciousness. Anyway, besides Frederick, no one could know or hear this. However, the old freaks with the exquisite cultivation base immediate understood it. Frederick had contacted that man of Tsunami Chamber of Commerce. The massive corpse showed it shortly after. As Tai Dun was tied by the corpse chi, his vitality was drained rapidly. His eyes bulged when he attempted to escape using the soul altar. However, the hand that was made of countless corpses had a firm grip on him and compressed him forcefully. Tai Dun's soul altar shattered immediately and turned into countless light dots that vanished. The manager of Black Iron City was killed quickly and simply like that. The massive corpse that contained Frederick's soul had smashed him utterly. The warriors of the Thousand Fantasy Sect, Broken Hall, Heaven River Temple, and Imperial Dark Tribe were indifferent. No one said a word to stop Frederick. They were familiar with Frederick's brutal deeds. Many old warriors had surprised smiles as they felt that Frederick had changed somehow. He was much more tender than before. It was because they could see that Frederick had notified the mysterious man of Tsunami Chamber of Commerce before he killed Tai Dun. In the past, besides Bloodthirsty, their master, the 8 chiefs of the Bloodthirsty Force never gave anybody face. Under their rage, they could drown an entire star area in misery and bury billions of creatures altogether. Today, Frederick was much more restrained. He had surprised the people who used to witness his brutal nature. He dares to kill even Tsunami Chamber of Commerce's staff. This man is too savage. Audrey of the Imperial Dark Tribe cried. Gillette glanced at her, his face odd. He contemplated for a while and then said, Frederick used to be too callous. That year when he got angry, it meant that billions of creatures would become corpses. When he got angry, even Bloodthirsty couldn't control him. He could even attack other chiefs instantly. He had never thought about giving mercy or favor to any more. Currently, he looks controlled a lot. I guessed it's because his body is still confined. After thousands of years, time has worn out his savage characteristics. Gillette forced a smile and looked at the massive corpse with fear flashing in his eyes. We couldn't believe that the brutal evil of the corpse chi force that year knew how to control his anger today. Lena of the Heaven River Temple sighed. She mumbled, if the bloodthirsty force had controlled itself a little bit that year, the God Clan wouldn't have had a chance to rise. To counter the bloodthirsty force 10,000 years ago, the number of famous experts who had fallen in that battle was around 2/3. Many great powers Upanishads were lost. For them, this cosmos had to pay a big price that it hasn't recovered even after 10,000 years. Lena's eyes were dark and unpredictable. She looked at the young man who was still immersed in his comprehending session. She thought, would they raise the blood rain again? What should the Heaven River Temple do? Teacher, he won. I knew he would win. Cecilia's eyes were shining as she looked tipsy with admiration. She smiled and looked at the young man sitting on the ground. Her beautiful face blushed and she also felt hot. He won. The bloodthirsty force has proven to us that they are still very intimidating after 10,000 years. Lena gave her a slight nod. So we Heaven River Temple has made up our mind, right? Asked Cecilia. We will talk about this when we come back. I have to report to the temple master. She will decide it. Sigh, the whole picture will become more chaotic after this. Lena sounded as if she didn't expect Shi Yang to win. She wanted to maintain the current situation. She didn't expect the bloodthirsty force to rise again and replace the God clan. Because of the bloodthirsty force's savage nature in that era that was worse than what the God clan had now, that era was the worst nightmare to any warrior. Many experts at their peak had to live under the shadow of the bloodthirsty force and it had suffocated them. She never wanted to live in that era again. Readjusting yourself. Someone will guide you for the next part. Shen He and I have called for the 8 inheritances scattering around the universe. We're going to the Holy Land to set up a sacrificing altar. We're preparing the final steps for you to enthrone. A wisp of soul consciousness suddenly echoed in Shi Yang's head. While it was twirling around Shi Yang's sea of consciousness, the massive corpse standing by the mansion gradually lost its corpse chi. The energy streamed back into the universe and disappeared into the sea territory by Tsunami Star. Frederick's aura disappeared. The terrifying pressure covering Black Iron City vanished after this moment. Many people exhaled in relief. The vague shadows hiding in the 13-stone tower emerged. They landed from the air while smiling in a friendly way. They walked towards Shi Yang, Gullion of the Thousand Fantasy sect. It's fortunate that I can meet Bloodthirster's successor today. This trip isn't bad at all. Xing Ming of the Broken Hall. Lena of the Heaven River Temple. They came with smiles, standing by him with stable auras. Those people included men and women, internal disciples at the high realms, and juniors coming for experience. They all eyed him carefully as if they wanted to see all of his secrets. Cecilia of the Heaven River Temple. After everybody finished their introductions, a charming voice arose. Shi Yang was confused. His eyes suddenly became focused as he beamed sincerely. He looked at the graceful figure behind the group and asked, "When did you come here?" "I've been here for a long time. I've always been watching you," Cecilia answered gently, her watery eyes filled with emotion. "Audrey of the Imperial Dark Tribe." Another cold and clear voice arose. Then, Audrey walked out of the crowd. She was wearing a cyan dress, her long hair draping around her shoulders. Her eyes were bright and it gave her mysterious and elegant bearings. Like a cold moon. The seniors and juniors of Thousand Fantasy Sect and the Broken Hall became stiff when they heard the name Audrey of Imperial Dark Tribe. They proactively made way for her and let her walk straight towards Shi Yang. "Long time no see," Audrey said. She was still cold, arrogant, and indifferent as usual. "Yeah, long time no see." Shi Yang lifted his head, but he sat still. "Congratulations. You've also reached incipient God realm. You didn't fail the reputation of your tribe." He studied Gillette standing behind Audrey. Shi Yang could feel an aura that wasn't weaker than Spark from Gillette. His aura was even stronger than Spark's. Shi Yang could confirm that this man was at least at Spark's realm. Such a character was enough to threaten his life. He couldn't ignore it. He had to treat him gingerly. "Kid, you're excellent. As you can defeat Haig, you're eligible to inherit Bloodthirster's legacy." Gillette squinted and looked at Shi Yang then Audrey. A strange light sparkled in his eyes when he was contemplating. "Thank you, Precursor." Shi Yang clasped his fist to greet him. "I've spent a lot of energy in the battle. Forgive me for not treating you well. If you don't mind, please wait for me for a while." "It's okay. It's okay." The warriors of the Thousand Fantasy Sect and the Broken Hall answered. Chapter 1246, Godlord's Soul Arrives. Chapter 1246, Godlord's Soul Arrives. Ancient God Shrine. Feng Ju and some God clan's elders were sitting neatly under the massive, majestic god statues. All of them wore dark and sinister faces and were silent. They seemed to be waiting for something. Suddenly, a starlight landed and entered Ancient God Shrine. It was Spark. Spark paled, gave a dark smile, and hurled Haig aside. Haig immediately kneeled down in front of the god statues and the elders. His head lowered and he said nothing. He was defeated again. He didn't say anything to defend himself. He could only wait for the elders' decision in silence. Spark shot Feng Ju a look, his eyes murderous. An opportunity was given. It's he who couldn't grab it. He is no longer eligible to lead our clan in the future. What about your opinions? Feng Ju looked at the other elders. The elders then nodded and looked at Haig with their cold and heartless eyes. Currently, Haig was just an outsider that they didn't want to mind anymore. Haig lifted his head, his face ashen. He felt a chill in his heart as he could recognize something. He stood up and tried to run away with his life. Feng Ju sighed and raised one hand to grab the void. A dry and thin hand appeared in the air and pulled Haig back. The old man lifted his head to look at the god statue next to him, his face sinisterly resolute. Prepare for his soul to arrive. Feng Ju had a rare respectful complexion when he mentioned someone. It seemed like that person had incredible fame and power in this god clan, and the great elder and the other elders of this committee had to show respect when talking about him. Haig's face was as grey as ash. He couldn't help but shout ear-piercingly, "Eno! Shut up!" Spark snorted coldly. A cold yin symbol arose and sealed Haig's mouth, silencing him. The elders of the god clan then released their soul altars that had various shapes and countless supernatural abilities. Their soul altars bobbed in the void and created a magical formation with terrifying energy fluctuations. The god statues that had stood in this shrine for so many years suddenly revived at this moment. They started to release wisps of memories and soul consciousness that had been kept for so many years that then congregated in the middle of the formation created by the elder's soul altar. The wisps of soul consciousness united and became an ancient soul that had the immense aura of the primal time. Each elder wore a solemn face and each host soul hovered respectfully on their soul altars. That ancient soul condensed for a while and turned into a black cloud. As Haig was watching everything and freaking out, the black cloud stormed into his head and intruded his soul altar. Haig's incipient extent changed earth-shakingly. His realm increased amazingly from first sky of incipient god realm to third sky of incipient god realm immediately. The bottlenecks between his realms were broken easily. After a short moment, he had reached an unimaginable height. Haig closed his eyes right from the beginning as if he was digesting something. He sat quietly to stabilize his realm. All the god clan's elders studied the new Haig. After they had retrieved their soul altars into their body, the elders kneeled down and greeted him, "Your Majesty, welcome back." Haig didn't react. It seemed like he hadn't adjusted to his new body yet, so he didn't answer the elders. The god clan's elders didn't lose their patience. They remained in their kneeling postures and waited in silence. They understood clearly that before that man had wakened up, the elder committee was the supreme structure of the god clan. But when this man woke up, the elder committee became his backdrop. They had to be servile to him with great respect. This need of being servile hadn't been in their makings for a long time. As it came back now, they all felt a little awkward. Before that man had woken up, the elder committee was the most powerful organization in this cosmos. And now, everything was gone. After a long time, the man opened his eyes, which weren't really special. Compared to the previous Haig, the wise and bright man, this man looked just like the most ordinary man in this world. He didn't have any strange halo. His gaze raked through the faces of Feng Ju, Spark, and the other elders. Use my name to summon the 4 heavenly kings. Yes. Feng Ju, Spark, and the other elders nodded respectfully. Inside the ruined mansion, many stone towers had collapsed and the ground became rough. The bridges and the mountain pavilions were now a big mess. The battle between Shiyang and Haig had leveled this mansion and destroyed the entire quiet resort. However, the experts of the Thousand Fantasy Sect, the Broken Hall, and the Heaven River Temple didn't really mind the situation. They were all gathering in a cracked meeting hall. There were no servants here. Mu Wei, Jiao Mu, Bai Yi Feng, and the others stood there, but nobody came to serve them drinks or fruits. Gullion, Xing Ming, and Lena were the representatives of the Thousand Fantasy Sect, the Broken Hall, and the Heaven River Temple. These three forces were the strongest forces in the universe besides the four great creatures. They had their position and the God Clan wasn't going to provoke them. They were waiting for Shi Yang here and they didn't look impatient at all. Mu Wei, Bai Yifeng, Jiao Mu, and Sanji were here to seek help. They told each other about the tough situation of their star areas and the horrible pressure from the God Clan. Gullion, Xing Ming, and Lena just listened to them and promised nothing. They made Mu Wei's team more restless. Audrey and Gillette also stayed in this mansion, but they didn't come to the meeting hall. The Imperial Dark Tribe could just stand and watch the competition between the God Clan and the Bloodthirsty Force. If they didn't want to join, the God Clan and the Bloodthirsty Force wouldn't have any reason to retaliate against them later. However, the Thousand Fantasy Sect, the Broken Hall, and the Heaven River Temple couldn't stay neutral. Although they had their positions in the Sea of Stars, they weren't one of the four great creatures, so they didn't have the background to stand equally with the God Clan or the Bloodthirsty Force. They needed to make a choice. Cecilia stood by her teacher Lena. Her bright eyes were so charming and had a faint smile. She was in a good mood, indeed. Cecilia Jeje, do you know him? A young girl standing by Gullion of the Thousand Fantasy Sect beamed charmingly. This young girl was around 20. She wore a water-green short dress. She had bright skin with beautiful eyes. When she smiled, two dimples showed up pretty cute on her face. She was Gullion's daughter. As she knew Cecilia, seeing her love-spreading emotion, she felt that it fun so she cried. As Gulling had witnessed the battle between Haig and Shi Yang, she was so astounded. Being a member of the Thousand Fantasy Sect, Gulling knew how intimidating the God Clan was. For the past 10,000 years, the God Clan had continuously proven their position as the overlords of this universe. Gulling knew a little about the Bloodthirsty Force from her elders. She didn't live in that era, so she trusted half of what her elders had told her. Gulling didn't think that the existence that used to subdue the God Clan and make the God Clan join hands with forces from everywhere to counter was true. She thought that her precursors had just exaggerated. Until the end of the battle between Shi Yang and Haig, Gulling then knew how intimidating the force that had frightened her precursors was. Gulling was curious about Bloodthirst's successor. She wanted to know what was so special about him and how he defeated the future leader of the God Clan. Of course, I know him, Cecilia smiled. You didn't go to the ancient continent to train, so you don't know him. If you had gone to the ancient continent, you would have known of his competence. He's stronger than Haig. Gulling giggled, then lowered her voice. Cecilia, you and him, is there something? Cecilia blushed. She thinned her lips and talked nothing. They stood behind their precursors and chatted. They kept their voices low as they were having girl talk. However, the juniors of the Broken Hall and the other forces were listening to them. When they mentioned Shi Yang, Cecilia looked shy and excited, which cooled down the young men who had claimed themselves handsome and elegant. They snorted discreetly. While the juniors were chatting behind them, the precursors sitting in the front were also discussing. Gullion asked, Lena, your disciple, and he used to be on the ancient continent. Has he ever met the chiefs of the Bloodthirsty Force? I don't know, Lena shook her head. Xing Ming looked disappointed. He turned to Mu Wei and Bai Yifeng. He asked, Mu Ji, Bai Ji, has Shi Yang been taken to the Holy Land of the Bloodthirsty Force to enthrone yet? We don't actually know, Mu Wei and Bai Yifeng shook their heads. Xing Ming frowned. The Bloodthirsty Force has 8 great inheritances for the 8 power Upanishads. Thus, they have 8 forces with 1 chief for each. Each of these chiefs was an earth-shaking expert. All of them were supernatural and tyrannical. They didn't get along well with each other. As Bloodthirsty could subdue and control them, they had cooperated with each other. But now, Bloodthirsty was gone. Who could unite these 8 forces? After a while, Xing Ming asked. It's true. That year after Bloodthirsty had fallen, the 8 forces detached from each other. They fought alone. They didn't want to cooperate. If they had cooperated well, even when Bloodthirsty was gone, the Bloodthirsty Force would have defeated them. Before that, it was the only time that the 8 chiefs joined hands. Amazingly, they could directly attack the ancient god continent of the god clan. If they had maintained that alliance, even without Bloodthirsty, the god clan couldn't have defeated them. Gullion wore an odd face. Will Shi Yang today be able to reunite the 8 forces from the 8 great inheritances? Lena wore a bitter face. Xing Ming, Gullion, and Lena exchanged looks. They could see that the others hesitant. They then sighed inwardly. They knew well that the 8 forces of the Bloodthirsty force were powerful, but they didn't listen to others. Only when Bloodthirsty existed, they united. That year when Bloodthirsty had fallen, the 8 forces had competed against each other to gain a leading role. It gave the god clan the golden opportunity to destroy them one by one. Anyway, in the end, they had finally united to attack the god clan once and for all, directly fighting them in their ancestral star. The god clan had to pay a bloody price at that time. If the 8 great inheritances could unite to fight against the god clan, of course, the forces present here would have stood on Bloodthirsty Force's side. But if the forces of Bloodthirsty Force still had internal fighting or didn't want to join hands, they would have to be with the god clan for sure. It was the reason why they were hesitant. They weren't suspicious of the Bloodthirsty Force's intimidation. They knew how strong the 8 forces were. However, even though they were strong, their situation was going to be very serious if they didn't want to unite. Let's wait for that kid Shi Yang. He'll give us a proper explanation, said Gullion. Chapter 1247, Go to the next level. Chapter 1247, Go to the next level. Shi Yang sat quietly in a cracked stone chamber. Shuo Jiao, Jiao Shan, and Jiao Hai were guarding at his door to prevent people from disturbing him. The acupuncture points in his body throbbed while his body convulsed and relaxed from time to time. His incipient extent floating above his head was brilliant with suns, moons, and twinkling stars. Meteors shot across his galaxy as if they were trying to convey some mysterious principles of earth and heaven. Waves of magical energy rippled from his incipient extent like real water, expanding inside the stone chamber. It doesn't feel right. Shi Yang frowned and mumbled. He opened his eyes, his face baffled. He tried to think more. The devouring power Upanishad was the key to his victory in the battle between Shi Yang and Haig. He had used the black hole in the incipient extent to absorb the negative energy in his entire body to release the black hole from his incipient extent and get out of the space he had created. Then, it swallowed the meteor created by Metal Star. At this moment, that meteor had become a star in his incipient extent and had his aura. When the star had been devoured by the black hole, every sign of Haig was cleaned. The devouring power Upanishad was the major power of Bloodthirsty. It was the core power that covered the 8 great inheritances. Being Bloodthirsty's heir, if he couldn't learn the deepest understanding of devouring power Upanishad, what could he use to inherit his legacy? What could he use to make the Cortege of 8 submit and support him wholeheartedly? He had used this magical power Upanishad to gain the utmost triumph in this battle. This battle was also the first time he recognized the profound characteristics of his power Upanishad, as it was a magical, unique power in this world. Now, he knew why devouring was the untold secret of Bloodthirsty. This power could swallow all things created in the opponent's incipient extent. If he hadn't joined this battle, he would have never imagined this ability, not even in his dreams. Thus, he now knew that he was sitting on a mountain of gold, but he didn't know how to use it. Without a thorough knowledge of devouring power Upanishad, Shi Yang hadn't considered it very important to him. He was still vague about the supernatural abilities that this power could offer him. For example, right now, he wanted to use the awesome ability of this power again. He had moved the black hole from the tier of his power Upanishad in his soul altar to the incipient extent. Then, he connected the incipient extent and the acupuncture points in his entire body. Shi Yang had tried and failed many times. The power he had performed was like a flower that had already withered. Although he was trying his best to perform it one more time, he gradually lost his spirit and felt like his hands were tied. It was because he had spent too little time studying the devouring power Upanishad. He had strenuously cultivated space, death and life, and star power Upanishad, and his breakthroughs were dependent on these three major powers. At the same time, the devouring power Upanishad hadn't affected his realm's progress. He always thought that it was strange, but he didn't actually focus on this power Upanishad as much as the other three. If one of his three power Upanishads including space, star, and death and life didn't progress, his realm couldn't increase, either. But it was different from his devouring power Upanishad. He didn't need to spend time or efforts to experience it. This power Upanishad didn't require any flash of recognition or deep understanding to break through. As it wasn't bound to his realm, it didn't hold him back even though he didn't cultivate it. Slowly, he had forgotten this power. He thought that the devouring power Upanishad was used to swallow the soul altar only. He didn't know much about this marvelous power of his. Until today. Today, he suddenly understood that the devouring power Upanishad didn't only swallow the soul altar. As it was Bloodthirst's lost secret, it definitely had to contain the most magical power in this world. Shi Yang was determined to learn it. Flows of thought flashed in his head. He had continuously simulated and tried to perform that change. Also, he found that he couldn't connect his incipient extent with the acupuncture points in his body. There must be something stuck somewhere. Shi Yang frowned and said to himself while thinking harder. He then immersed himself in his memories. At first, he fell into the dark forest and soaked himself in the blood pond. In the blood cocoon, he received Bloodthirst's inheritance. Then, he got his first marvelous transformation. The dregs and contaminants in his body were all discharged. He got a beam of original power in his body. Then, after a fight, his acupuncture points automatically gathered and filtered the essence chi from the dead warriors of the Mo family. The refined energy from his acupuncture points had strengthened himself. It could be said that all the things he got today, his realm and his power, was because of the merit of his changed acupuncture points. Previously, he thought that it was the death power Upanishad by Xian He, the chief of the death force, that allowed his acupuncture points to take in the essence chi of the dead. Today, seeing the marvelous feature of the devouring power Upanishad, he thought about a different possibility. It wasn't the power of the death power Upanishad. It was a special performance of the death power Upanishad. In other words, when the blood in the pond refined his body, he had received the devouring power Upanishad inheritance. The ability of his acupuncture points was from the devouring. It had nothing to do with death power Upanishad here. The devouring power Upanishad could swallow the essence chi from the dead, swallow soul altars, and even the objects in the other's incipient extent. What else could it devour? He was shocked as he had a flash in his head. The hazy mist in his head was swept away quickly. His mind became clear and bright. The doubts in his heart were all gone. It turned out that he has received the devouring power Upanishad right in that cave. But it was funny that he hadn't recognized it until now. He thought that it was an ability of the death power Upanishad when his acupuncture points could absorb the essence chi of the dead. He didn't realize that it was the nature of devouring power Upanishad. Today, he was able to gain all of these because of his magical acupuncture points. In his early cultivation, he didn't need to take the power from the sun or the moon. He just needed the essence chi from his acupuncture points to break through. His realm could be broken through quickly and continuously. This devouring power Upanishad was what had made him a miracle. However, it was ridiculous that after he had the black hole in his brain, which was the advanced performance of the power, he hadn't tried to invest on and study this power Upanishad. It turned out that it was the best treasure he had neglected. As he knew the change of his acupuncture points was an ability of his devouring power Upanishad, the mist in his head was cleared now. He chuckled and then urged his devouring power Upanishad once again. The incipient extent emerged above Shi Yang's head. He changed his thoughts and the black hole slowly appeared in his incipient extent. Then, a divine light flashed like a bunch of dry wood ignited. His acupuncture points were triggered. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The 720 acupuncture points and the vortexes in each acupuncture point began to stir. Shortly after, they connected the incipient extent and that black hole. The black hole drifted away from his incipient extent. It looked mysterious when it had a powerful suction force, as if it could draw all souls in this world into that black mouth. At the same time, Shi Yang's acupuncture points felt so numb. Then, they began to have the same suction force. The life magnetic field, vitality, earth and heaven energy, energy from the divine crystals, energy from divine weapons and formations around the area stirred up. They became loose from what kept them, and they were able to enter his acupuncture points if he wanted to take them in. The black hole could swallow things in soul form, and the acupuncture points could draw the matters with energy. They were both abilities of the devouring power Upanishad. They just had different forms. Shi Yang laughed. Shi Yang urged his god power. The acupuncture points sent him pain when the suction force got stronger. Inside the mansion, the warriors of the Thousand Fantasy Sect, the Broken Hall, the Heaven River Temple, Mu Wei, and Jiao Mu suddenly felt dizzy. Their host souls seemed to want to leave their soul altars and drift away from their heads. Their essence qi in the body also fluctuated. They were freaking out. This feeling, Gullion discolored in fright, her face shocked. Xingming paled. He looked at the direction far from them, his face solemn. He took a deep breath. Is it the real power of bloodthirsty? He looked at Lena uncertainly. Lena's face was bitter as she shook her head. That year, the warriors eligible to attack that man were killed or disappeared. I wasn't there, so I don't actually know how the devouring power Upanishad is. Gullion, Xingming, Lena, and the leaders of the other forces didn't join the battle that year because their realms hadn't been profound enough at that time. They could only know how strong bloodthirsty was from the stories that their teachers and precursors had told them. They hadn't experienced it, so they didn't know how intimidating the real devouring power Upanishad was. They only knew that this power was almost unrivaled. It was the most evil power known in this vast sea of stars. It was the first power that every force and every race agreed on. At a corner of the mansion, Gillette of the Imperial Dark Tribe looked shocked. His countenance changed dramatically when he turned to look in Shi Yang's direction. "What do you think?" he asked in a low-pitched voice. Audrey had stood up for a long time ago, her exquisite face filled with fear. That aura seems to want to swallow everything that was a soul form and matters with energy. It wanted to convert them into his energy. Is it the true devouring power Upanishad? Gillette nodded heavily. He took a deep breath and then said, "That kid has reached the next level of the devouring power Upanishad. He's making progress. As he could emit such an aura, he has finally gone to the next level. How terrifying is the devouring power Upanishad?" Audrey screamed in fear. You just need to know that Bloodthirsty was surrounded by all of the peerless experts of that time. It was 10,000 years ago. In the end, 90% of them were killed. You can tell why this power Upanishad is considered the strongest and the first power Upanishad in this world. Gillette forced a smile. His eyes couldn't hide his fear. Half of the gravestones you've seen in our holy land are there because of Bloodthirsty. Audrey paled while listening to him. The holy land of the Imperial Dark Tribe had gravestones of tribal precursors. Only the strongest warriors of the clan with the greatest contributions could be worshipped in the holy land. The warriors whose gravestones were there used to be earth-shaking experts. Each of them was so intimidating. However, Bloodthirst's devouring power Upanishad had killed half of them. Hearing this, Audrey was aghast. No wonder why our Imperial Dark Tribe couldn't rise in that era. Our experts were killed and we had no personnel show up, Audrey sighed, her beautiful eyes pondering. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.